So one of the first ones that it talks about, I think it's actually before 8.05, is if the pitcher is within the circle of the pitching mound. It doesn't have to be on the mound, but within the circle of the pitching mound, put their hand to their mouth. Okay. Immediate balk, there's nothing you can do but call that. Okay. Now, at the 50-70 level, one thing to remember is that these kids are just learning how to pitch from the stretch, with runners on, with leadoffs. So what I would typically do in that environment, I would just go over to them and say, can't do that, maybe wait till after the inning and then I'll talk to them. You know, so it's about teaching these kids as well so that people understand. The other thing, and you brought it up specifically, pitcher gets on the rubber, right? He's getting ready to pitch, he starts his motion, then he stops for some reason. It's an automatic balk. Okay? You make the call. In Naperville, are we doing first 2 weeks warnings at 50?
I think that would be legitimate.
Isn't that what we've typically done in the past? Like,
yes.
Right? The first 2 weeks of the season, what we typically do is just give them a warning. Okay. After the second one, then you're going to call balk. So if that pitcher gets on and starts to do his wind-up stops, you call balk. You don't call time. You never call time. You say balk. Okay. A balk, when you call that, is what's considered a delayed dead ball. And a delayed dead ball means it let the play continue if there is a play continuing. Once the play ends, then you call time. But as soon as the balk infraction happens, you announce balk. As an umpire, if you're behind, okay, the pitcher stops, you say balk, he then continues the throw, you let it throw, let the play happen. Once it's finished, then you say time, that was a balk, and then you make the appropriate call at that particular time. Okay?
So if you pitch this and you hit a home run, what happens?
Yeah, great question. All right, so let's say the balk occurs and the batter hits a home run. It then becomes the coach's decision. Of course, we know the coach's decision is going to be in that particular call to either take the play that occurred or the balk. In that situation, he's definitely taking the home run, right? But then we think of a situation where maybe he would take the balk. Let's say the balk is called. Okay, pitcher's thrown. Batter gets a hit, but there was a runner at third. Batter gets a hit. The runner scores. Let's see if I'm getting that right. That would
you'd take that in.
You take the hit. Oh, here we go. Batter was thrown out. Hits the ball. There's less than 2 outs. Batter hits the ball. Second baseman. The run scores. They throw the batter out. The coach, let's say it's a tie game at that particular point, the coach may elect to take the balk in that situation, okay, because the run's going to score, or he may take the out. So it all depends on the situation whether they're going to take that or not. Okay.
So it's kind of like declining a penalty in the NFL.
It is. Mm-hmm. It's one of the few times within the rules of baseball that the coach gets to choose what he's going to take. The other time is catcher's interference. It's a delayed dead ball. The coach can choose to take whatever occurred or allow the infraction. Okay? Good question. The other thing, when you look at a balk and you've got these kids that are on your mound that are just learning, the thing you're really looking for is what is their intent? Are they intending to deceive the runner, or are they just nervous and fidgeting up there and they make a little move? Right? Because everybody knows when you get in your set position, once you get set, as soon as you move to start going, you have to continue, right? But if the player kind of goes like this a little bit, or maybe turns his shoulder, that's not intent, is it? So you don't want to be tic-tacky about those. So you just want to call what you feel is appropriate at that particular time. Like I said, there are certain things you have to call. Set, start, throw, stop, that you have to call. So it's all about intent. If the pitcher is on the mound, They can throw to any base from that mound without stepping off, as long as they step towards that base first prior to throwing. Right? So you see it with lefties all the time, right? They get their set position, and what they do, they step first and then they throw, right? Their foot's still on the rubber, however, they're going towards the base. You see it when you get, the righties, okay, or lefty, after going to second, they're like this. Once they step, then they can throw. As long as you step first and throw towards the base, you can do that. Same thing for a righty at third base, right? You can throw over the third. Questions on that? You guys know all this stuff, don't you? For the most part, the key is intent, right? Understand what they're trying to do. A pitcher cannot fake or actually throw to an unoccupied base. So, for example, runner at first, they weren't even thinking about it, and they do the turn, they throw to second base, runner wasn't going or anything. That's thrown to an unoccupied base, that's a ball. Now, what if the runner is stealing? Runner is stealing, and he turns, throws to second base. What is that? Excuse me?
Still a ball.
It is not a balk at that point. As long as you're throwing to get a runner out, if the runner's going into that base, it's not considered a balk. Okay? That one's a little bit confusing, right? The runner is stealing, as long as they're going towards the base. It's the only time you can throw to an unoccupied base to be an occupied base. Now, if he was stealing the second and through the third, that would be an unoccupied base. Questions on that? Yes?
What if he's picking off first and the runner takes second, if the unoccupied is the first?
No, because that's where he was at the time. So the question was, what if he goes to pick him off at first, but then the runner takes off? Is that now first an unoccupied base? The answer is no, it's not unoccupied. That's where the runner was at. Good question. One of the other things that you want to watch for, specifically at this age, is a quick pitch. Okay? Batter's in the batter's box, right? Kind of getting ready. Pitcher gets up, takes his time, and starts throwing right away before the batter's really set or even looking forward. You want to kill that immediately and say no pitch, right? I would always warn them first as they continue to do that. That's when you're going to call that as a block. You don't want them to quick pitch. You as an umpire, you want to control a pitcher that's trying to pitch before the batter is really getting set. Now, if the batter's goofing around and not getting set as quickly as you need to, then you're hustling the batter. Question?
Is that true when he's like just standing in the batter's box?
Is that true if he's just standing in the batter's box? I'm not sure if I understand what you mean by that.
Like if he's standing in the batter's box and he's still like fixing his gloves or something? But
Yeah, so what I would do in that
Can you
particular
repeat that? Because I'm taking you.
Excuse me?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. So the question is, what if the batter's standing in the batter's box, but he's fixing his gloves or maybe kicking dirt off of his cleats? In that particular situation, what I would do as an umpire is I would ask the batter to call time because he's in the box and not really set. I would probably call time and tell him if you're going to do that, make sure you have 1 foot out of the box. The thing that we don't want to do at these ages, you don't want any kid to get hurt because we allow a pitch to occur when the batter is not ready. Okay? That's when somebody's going to get hurt, no one will take them into place. As we talked about, if you start and stop, that is a balk. If you make any motion attributed to a pitch, any motion, and you don't pitch it, that's a balk. Or if you stop, that's a balk. So an example of that, in a wind-up position, I guess most time they would be in the set, let's say the set position, right? They get set, and now they bring their hand down, going to throw. Okay, that's getting ready to throw. If he doesn't throw, then it's not going to, then it's a balk in that particular case. Okay? Any motion associated with a pitch would be considered. Give me 1 second, give me one other idea. If you are in the windup, let's say the pitcher's in the windup, and he realizes there's a runner at first. If he starts like this, that's it. That's a balk, right? If he doesn't continue with it. Question?
So when you say that, like, making a motion towards the pitcher, you mean like moving his arm, so like he's down, like looking at the pitcher, and then he brings it up and then takes it back off?
That's not at all, because what he's doing is the question is, if he gets set and then he takes his foot off, okay, now he's no longer the pitcher, now he's a fielder. So in that particular situation, he then, once the pitcher's set and he takes that right foot off, which is his pivot foot, once he does that, he's now a fielder and he can then do whatever he wants. He can throw to any base he wants at that particular time. Not prudent to throw to third if there's a runner at first, right? But he could do that. Okay. If a pitcher gets over to you've got the pitcher's plate right here, and he goes and he stands astride it, and he does not have the ball, that's an automatic block. Okay? The only reason a pitcher would go over and stand astride or touching the pitcher's plate without the ball is what? The intent to make the runner think that he has the ball. Right? It's one way that you try for a hidden ball trick, right? You guys have probably heard of the hidden ball trick before. But in that particular case, you can only utilize a hidden ball trick as long as I stay away from the mound as the pitcher. Away from the mound, first baseman has the ball, runner takes off, then they can tag. Or if I go and I get out by the mound and I don't have the ball, runner comes off, he tags him, that's a block because I don't have the ball in my hand. Oh yeah, question.
Does the base umpire have any right to call a balk?
Yes, yes. Any umpire can call a balk at any time, okay? And it doesn't have to be the plate, it can be the base umpire. And the key is for both of you, if you've got a two-man system, to be watching for balks, okay? Now once again, what's the intent? So don't critique it so close that if they make a little fidget, you're going to call it, and then you're just going to make their lives miserable, the coach's lives miserable, and ultimately yours would be as well.
I have a more general question for the key umpires. The key umpire, the plate umpire, or if the base umpire makes a call, can the plate umpire overrule that call and say, so like if he makes a bad call and then we talk to him, we can reverse that call, right?
Yeah, so
Because the coach said, oh, the base umpire made that call, you can, as a plate umpire, you can overrule that.
yeah, so
Can you repeat that?
the question is, in a two-man system, if the base umpire makes a call, can the plate umpire overrule that call if the manager came out and asked, or just any other time to do that? The quick answer to that is no umpire will ever overrule another umpire, regardless of whether it's the plate umpire or the base umpire. Okay? That's the quick answer to it. Now, if a manager comes out and questions the call, let's say it was the base umpire who made the call, and he comes out to the plate umpire and says, you had a better look at that, you saw it, right, he was safe. And as a plate umpire, you say, well, I was watching for tag at third, make sure the runner went on third or whatever. You can't ask me, you've got to ask the umpire, base umpire, because he's the one who made the call. Then when the coach goes out and asks the base umpire, and he would say, look, I could see from here, you didn't have a good angle, and he took his foot off, let's say he was at a first base play, he took his foot off, you could call time, right, at that point, and you, if as a base umpire, you can say, you know what, maybe I didn't see what I thought I saw, I'm going to go talk to the plate umpire. You're going to come to the plate umpire and you're going to say, this is what I saw. I saw the fielder catch the ball at first with his foot on the base. What did you see? The plate umpire says, yes, he caught the ball, but his foot was a foot off the base. Okay? Then you, as the base umpire, made the original call, then we'll change it and go out. Okay? You, whoever made the call, is the only one that can change the call. Now, if there's a play at second base, I'll give you another example. It's really close play, bang, bang, you call the runner out. Coach comes out and says, I think you missed that one. You say, Coach, I was right here and I saw it. There's no need to ask anybody else for help on that, is there? Okay? If you saw it and you sell it, and that's what you believe, and it's your judgment, they can't question your judgment call. Okay? Any other questions? All right, let's move on. Anytime the pitcher gets onto the pitcher's plate, and drops the ball, that's a ball. It's not intentional, just what he did, but it becomes a ball. I think we said this one already, once, no, actually I didn't. Once the pitcher gets set, if he then puts his hand down and doesn't have the ball in his hand, that's a balk. Okay? When a pitcher is in the set position, or actually in any position, wind him as well, the pitcher always has to have the ball in his hand. Anybody know the reason for that? That's a great answer right there. Okay? So what he said was that with the hidden ball trick, okay, if the pitcher's out there with his hand like this, but remember he's not on the mound though either. So maybe that's not such a great answer because you could be standing off the mound with the ball in your glove. But the main reason is so that you can't deceive the runner, right? If I bring the ball down, I can now see that ball. I'm not going to deceive the runner. That's the main reason why you always want to keep when you're on the plate, you always want to have the ball in your hand. The last one that I'll talk about, and one that you're probably going to get questioned the most on, especially at this particular league, is that the pitcher did not stop when he went into the set position. Right? So we all know when the pitcher's in set position, he gets set, he's got to stop. Okay? What Little League says is a discernible stop. Doesn't say for any amount of count, doesn't say how long, right? Just has to be a stop. So it's your judgment whether that pitcher actually stopped or not. Okay? So if I'm here and I go like this, was that a stop? Say it was a stop. Okay? But if I go like this, is that a stop? No, that's not a stop. Okay? Once again, if it's close, don't call it. Be absolutely positive that he didn't come to a stop, especially as the plate umpire. The plate umpire, it's a little bit more difficult in some cases because you're so focused on whether that's going to be a ball or a strike that sometimes you don't see whether it's really coming to a complete stop. That's where you need your partner out on the base and they want to watch you for that most closely. Now, as we talked about, and probably the other most important thing, when you call a balk, it's not an immediate dead ball, right? It's a delayed dead ball. Let the play occur. If the pitcher, if you yell balk and the pitcher stops, then you call time.
Where is that?
Where's what?
Where's the delayed dead ball versus dead ball?
You know what, I have to look specifically in the
It
book.
says the ball's dead, it's not even.
Yeah, you know what, I'll find that out, and then, do you have email that you sent out
Yep.
to these guys?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, rather than going through and trying to find the specific rule number, I might have in the presentation, for those who are sticking around, it might be in the presentation, the actual rule number. But it is absolutely delayed. What's different is in high school. In high school, National Federation of High School rules, it's an immediate dead ball on a block. So don't get confused with that. I was doing some of the National Baseball Association games last year, and I was letting it be a delayed dead ball, and realized I was getting those screwed up, and it was actually the high school is an immediate dead ball, and Little League is a delayed dead ball. Okay. Yes, question?
You said block is only 50/70.
So a balk, the question is balk just for a 50/70? For the ages that you're doing, I believe you only go up to 50/70, so yes, it's only a 50/70. All these infractions that may occur at the majors or below are illegal pitches. The illegal pitches are a ball to the bat. The balk is for the 50/70, which is the intermediate and above in Little League, so intermediate, juniors, seniors, and bigs. Yes?
Is an illegal pitch still a delayed dead ball?
An illegal pitch, the question is an illegal pitch still a delayed dead ball? And the answer there is yes.
So you call delayed dead ball or you call it dead ball?
You say illegal pitch. Okay? Same thing with a balk. When it occurs, we say balk. And the same thing when we get into obstruction. You're going to say obstruction that if that occurs, but you let the play continue. Any other questions?
This is the time, guys. Ask him. He's right here. Ask him
I
what you.
don't know how many are gonna be here for the rules clinic.
Hopefully many.
Yeah, okay, so, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of things that we're gonna be talking about there as well. All right.
But do you have anything that you had a conflict with a manager about? Anything that you can think of that a specific situation? Someone else might learn from it too.
Yes, question?
Like if a kid gets hit in the hands, would the hands be considered part of the bat?
Yeah.
So the question is, if the batter gets hit in the hand, are the hands considered part of the bat? And I will talk about that as we go through the presentation here. But the easiest way, and I like the way our district umpire chief answers it, he takes the bat and he holds it up in his hand, and he lets go of the bat and says, are the hands still part of the bat? No, the hands are not part of the bat. Okay. So what would you call if the batter swings at it and it hits his hands? What would you call right there?
Well, if it was in the strike zone, that'd be a strike, but.
Remember, he swung at it.
Oh, then that's a strike.
It's a strike, and it's an immediate dead ball. As soon as it hits the batter, it's an immediate dead ball, then you make the appropriate call. And in this case, he swung at it, so it's an immediate dead ball strike. And then you also said, well, what if he puts his hand out, right? Let's say he puts his hands out, and the ball was going to be over the strike zone, and it hits his hands, and then he pulls his hands back. Because the ball is over the strike zone, that is a strike. It's a dead ball still because it hit the batter. But it is a strike.
This happened like 2 or 3 times last year. If a batter hits a ball at second baseman, and then the second baseman goes to first, and it's like a high throw, and the first baseman has to like lean into the path of the runner, is that interference, or does the first baseman have a right to the ball if it's in front?
So the question is if a throw to the first baseman is such that it pulls him off the bag and into the path of the runner, and they both collide, what's the call? Anybody know the answer to that? You said that's obstruction? Everybody agree with that?
I don't know.
No? I'm seeing you shaking no. So what do you got then if you're saying no?
He has a right to the ball, so it's legal because he's going for the ball.
He has a right to the ball, so that makes it legal. What about the runner? Isn't he supposed to slide or avoid contact?
If he's
So
running,
what do you have there?
if he's running the first, he can't slide.
Yeah.
You can slide going into first, absolutely. It's not in most cases, it's not the right thing to do as a runner, but in some cases, it does make sense to slide into first. In this particular case, he didn't have time to slide, they just collided because of where the ball was going. Anybody know what we have? So one thinks obstruction, the other thinks it's interference by the batter.
You just let him collide.
You don't let them collide. But you've got it right, okay? The reality is you've got nothing. You've got nothing. It's just a play that occurs. It's what we as umpires call a train wreck. But there's nothing you can do from a rules perspective. They're both doing what they're supposed to be doing, okay? And they just happen to collide at that particular point. Okay? So as an umpire, what you can do is you can say, that's nothing, batter's safe, batter's out, whatever the appropriate call is. Yes?
With that pitch, do you want to have us force the batter to get out of the way of the ball?
Say that again.
Hit by pitch for guys like sort of crowding the plate, and it's clear that it's the pitch to hit him when he doesn't need to get out of the way. Would you still call that a pitch?
So the question is, if the pitch is coming in and the batter does not attempt to get out of the way, and it hits them, assuming it's a ball, it's not in the strike zone, right? Would you call that batter as a hit batter and award them first base or not?
No.
And the quick answer to that is absolutely not. If they're just standing there letting it hit them, I'm not going to award them first base. Now, where I would put a little bit more leeway on that, especially at the 50-70, where the kids can throw pretty decent curveballs. He may not know that was going to be a curveball and is just standing there and hits him. So if it's some sort of a breaking ball, I'm probably going to award the batter first base.
And then it's a ball, because it was outside the strike zone.
If it was outside the strike zone, it would be a ball. You would just, so if it was outside strike zone and he let it hit him, and you, at that particular time, state that batter didn't try to get out of the way, that's a ball. He doesn't get awarded first base. Any other questions? Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
To this year, and any of those neoprene sleeves, whether it's the pitching arm or the non-throwing arm, must be covered up by the undershirt. Once again, that undershirt cannot be gray or white. You guys, I'm sure have seen this and love those helmets, the bright shiny helmets from, I think Nike is one, or maybe Under Armour that has them out. So at this particular point, Little League has said no more. All helmets must have a non-glare surface, okay? No mirror-like substance. All right, now we're going to get into the specific rules. That's the only changes for this year, so it's not too many. Probably the fewest number of changes that I've ever seen, which is crazy. Now, here's one. This was actually changed a little bit in the middle of the year last year, and that is for all catchers must wear the metal fiber plastic type cup. That's something that was typical. And then an approved long or short chest protector. So it used to be for majors and below, you had to have that long, elongated portion at the bottom of the chest protector. Now, any level can wear the short model chest protector. They don't have to have that extra piece. Self-explanatory, right? We talked about this a little bit earlier during the pitcher's warm-up. The pitcher, or the catcher, I'm sorry, must have the catcher's helmet. They must have the mask and throw guard. Okay, it must be a helmet. It cannot be their hat worn backwards. It must be a helmet, the mask, and the throat protector. The other thing that they have to have when they're warming up is a catcher's mitt. You may see some of the kids come out with their regular glove. They can't. It's got to be a catcher's mitt.
So the cup is not required?
The cup is not required for warm-ups, and here's why. What you have in that particular situation, it's usually going to be softer throw. You don't have the batter in front of you hitting the ball, maybe reflecting it. So that's why the Little League looks at it and says you don't have to have that. Another reason that you're going to have that, you may have a player warming up as a coach. You may have a player warming up the pitcher who's not the actual catcher, right? Because you want the catcher, overdoing something else at that particular time. And only the catchers have to wear the cups. Now this is required for infield practice as well, whether they're squatted down or not. If the coach is hitting infield practice, it must be a player, as we talked about, and the player must have the catcher's mask and catcher's mitt on. Okay. So, rule 2.2, what is a bunt, right? A bunt is a batted ball, not swung at, but intentionally met by the bat and tapped slowly, right? So as we talked about, player squares to bunt. Okay, what happens if that player just stands there and the ball goes by and it's not in the strike zone? What's the call? Okay, did he intentionally try to bunt the ball, or was he just standing there? He was just standing there. So because he's just standing there, it's going to be a ball. So the key to this is that he intentionally tried to meet the ball. And it's easy to see, right? Batter like this doesn't move it, versus batter goes like this, forward with it, or drops the bat to try and hit it, you're going to call it a strike. Right. This is one you guys probably think is very easy to understand, right? What is a catch? First of all, player must have secure possession within his hand or the glove. He also must have complete control of the ball while in the hand or a glove, right? So if it's up on, in his armpit right here, it's not a catch, is it? He also must have voluntary release. So what does that mean? Voluntary release must mean that he's got the ball in his glove or his hand, and then he purposely reaches into that glove and goes to throw it out. Okay, that's voluntarily releasing it. Okay, so a catch is considered one where he catches it and then he's getting ready to throw it, the ball drops, that's still a catch. And it's no catch if it's a result of a collision or falling, right? Ball's in the glove, hits the ground, pops out, not a catch. It will also not be a catch if it hits the offensive player, hits the ground, fence, or an umpire. So let's say you run into the fence, hits in his glove, bounces off the fence, back into his gloves, that's not a catch. Okay. What I'm going to try and do is give you a couple video here. Let's see. A couple videos on a catch, and then you tell me what you see. We have to adjust the volumes here.
A sliding catch. Presley.
What do you guys think?
Goodness, I'm not so sure he caught it. Now the Marlins are coming out. Ozzie Guillen is coming out to say it was trapped. He's looking for help from the second base umpire, Mark Wagner. The third base umpire made the call. He didn't have a very good angle at all. Dobbs is standing on first base. All the umpires are going to get together here.
Who thinks it's a catch?
Dale Scott wants everyone to talk it over.
Nobody, huh?
Alex Presley sliding.
Why don't you think it's a catch?
Dale Scott, the third base umpire, called it. It appeared, Rich, that Presley reached down,
right?
as if when he made the
When he went to catch, you can see that
attempt,
it's like this, and it's
ball
down,
didn't stay
and he
in
reaches
his
in
glove.
to grab it. That's what I saw right away.
Guillen is waiting patiently. Morrison standing on second. Dobbs hopefully standing on first. Now, if they
Wait for the
move
visual
the trap,
replay.
then they've got to figure out where to put the base runners.
There you go.
No catch.
No catch.
And they're going to put the runners. I think they're going to put Morrison at third. Morrison has to be at third base. He was already at second. He has to advance. Yeah,
Watch, it comes
right
out. Well, it comes out and then he reaches.
That's a tough
He
call,
makes
isn't
it
it?
catch.
You can't see the ball on that angle.
He has it, but it comes out here. And that's when he reaches to get the ball. He's trying to hide it as long as possible, but reaches there.
He sold it pretty well.
Exactly what
And
you guys
here's
were
the
doing if you were
problematic
trying to-
thing about
So,
this.
right? All right, got one more on the catch, no catch.
Well, I'll tell you, a very controversial play tonight. We'll take a look at a couple of times, Joe and Cocky, that had a big effect on tonight's ball game. Cal Allen and Lake Travis of San Antonio. The Wildcats opening their Class 4A Region 4 Baseball Championship Series against Lake Travis tonight in San Antonio. Rob Destrasny, of course, warming up the ace of Cal Allen staff. And Lake Travis, fresh off that win over the movie. Here we go. Here's the play. Keep a close eye. Is it a catch or not? Nestloni seems to catch. Let's play it in slow motion.
What do you guys think? No catch. No catch. Yeah, why was that not a catch? No voluntary release. Exactly. He came out before he tried to take the ball out. Good job. All right. Oh, we started over. This is not going to be good if it continues to start over every time. All right, here we go. All right, so now we're going to talk about a definition of a fair or foul ball. So essentially, if you take a look at fair balls, a fair ball is one that lands before the base, right, in fair territory, and stays in fair territory, so that's a fair ball, or one that lands past the bases, first or third base, in fair territory, okay? It could bound in foul territory as long as it lands past the base in fair territory, that's a fair ball. And if it's in front, it must be in front of the base in fair territory as long as it's between the bases. Okay? And we'll go to the next one, and then we'll talk more specifically about examples to be able to provide you. A foul ball is one that is in lands or comes to rest in foul territory prior to hitting first or third base, or is touched in that particular area before first base or third base. In addition, if you take a look at some of the ones on the far left over here, you can see the one that's like this. So it starts off across third base in fair territory where fly ball lands in foul territory. That's going to be foul because it landed foul after the base. Okay? So we're going to get into some examples here for you. And then you guys tell me, okay, this particular one, fair or foul? Can't hear you. Say it loud. Foul ball. Foul ball. Why is it foul ball? Touched or came to rest in foul territory, right? Before the base. Fair or foul?
Fair. One doesn't catch.
Well, we're trying to, whether he catches it, and maybe it was a bouncer that came up that way.
Fair.
Fair or foul? I heard foul. I heard fair.
Well, if you caught it anywhere from
Now, this helps a little bit for you.
if you put it in foul territory, it's fair.
Yeah,
Is it a ground ball or a pop fly?
It doesn't matter in this particular case whether it was a fly ball or a ground ball. It's where the ball is touched at the point before it's in, it's where the ball is touched at the point of flight or the ground. Let's say in this particular, it's a fly ball, it hits his glove right there and he doesn't catch it. What do you call it? Foul. Why is it foul? And it's in relation to where the ball's at, not where his feet are at. Even though he's got his 2 feet in fair territory, it's still a foul ball. Because in baseball, unlike in football, 2 feet does not make a fair ball. Right? It's where the ball is in relation to the fair foul line. And this one here, a little bit more tricky. And think about the umpire. How's the umpire going to call? How's he going to call that one? You're behind the play, right?
I don't know, where's the ball? Where's the ball?
What would you think?
Is it like a fly or something?
Doesn't matter, right? Once again, it doesn't matter whether it's a fly ball. You're not determining whether it's a catch or no catch. You're determining whether it's a fair or foul. So foul ball is where it's at. It's a little deceiving because of the angles you're on, right? But if you're the umpire, you're just going to make the best call you can where you believe that ball is at the time he touches it. And I've got one more here. Fair or foul? Fair. Fair ball. Right, that one's really close, though. Right? Need to make sure you guys understand what a force is. So a force play is one where the batter requires a runner to vacate the base that they occupied at the time of the pitch. Does that make sense? Force, you have to be forced from the batter runner. So if there's a runner at first, batter runner puts the ball in play, the runner at first is being forced to second base. Runners at first and second, they're both being forced forward one base. Runner at second, only runner at second. You've got a batter, he hits the ball, runner at second is not forced. Okay, I think you guys pretty much got that one, right? So what is a foul tip? Foul tip, this is important. It must be sharp and direct from the bat to the catcher's mitt or hand. It must also be caught by the catcher. It is a strike. The ball remains live. Runners are in jeopardy, meaning if they get off the base, they can be thrown out. But it's not a catch if it rebounded off the catcher's chest protector or mask first. Right? It's got to be directly into the hand or the mitt. Right? You can bobble it a little bit too, as long as it's not touching anything else. Right? That's a foul tip. The difference, remember, the difference between a foul tip and a foul ball is the foul tip has to go directly into the catcher's mitt or hand. Must be caught. The ball is live. And a foul ball is a dead ball.
How could a foul tip never be a strike?
Say that again?
Says it's a strike. How could a foul tip never be a strike?
Can't. That's the point. It is a strike. It is a strike. That's just part of the rule book. I think it states what a foul tip is. Runner at first, foul tip occurs, he steals second base, what do you got? It's a live ball, just as if the batter swung and missed at it, he gets second base. Coach comes out to you and say, wait a second, that's a foul ball. You explain to the coach that's a foul tip. Foul tip directly is a live ball, therefore the runner can steal. Now this gets a little bit tricky is when you get into the a little bit tricky when you get into the infield fly rule. Okay? So there's a number of different scenarios that are required for an infield fly to be effective. Number one, it must be a fair fly ball. So we talked about some of those ones that whether they were fly ball or not, pop up. The first baseman was just on the other side of the first base line. Okay? It must be a fair ball for infield fly to be called. If it's anywhere close, you're going to say infield fly if fair. Okay? It cannot be a bunt or a line drive. It must be ordinary effort by the infielder. Okay? Usually what you do is if the infielder's got his back to you and he's running out for a pop fly, that's not ordinary effort, is it? Camped underneath it, ready to catch the ball, that's ordinary effort. Runners on first and second are bases loaded. The way I like describing this, if there's a force at third, less than 2 outs. Which goes into the next one, less than 2 outs. Force at third, less than 2 outs. It's the easiest way to remember in your mind. Because the only way you're going to have force at third is if you have runners at first and second, or bases loaded. Okay? It can be caught by any fielder. Doesn't matter whether it's an infielder, a catcher, pitcher, or outfielder. Okay? The batter runner is out. So, infield fly, if fair, if it's close. Infield fly, batter's out. You can call that right away. Okay? Eliminates any of the force plays associated. Right, so there's no longer a force because the runners, the runners are not protected from the standpoint of if they get off the base, they're in jeopardy, right? And then this is the only time a runner is protected by being on the base. If they get hit by a batted ball, is an infield fly. So if the ball infield fly out towards second base, you call it because the second baseman's right underneath it. Second baseman lets it fall and it hits the runner who's standing on second base. It's a no call. The batter's just out in that particular example. Okay. Question?
Let's say you forget to call outfield or infield fly. Is it still, all the rules still apply?
It does. So whether you call an infield fly or not, the infield fly rule is in force. If you make a mistake, you don't call it because it's not, you know, you're just starting out and you're learning how to be an umpire, you forget to do it in that particular situation. Afterward, the coach comes out and says, hey, that's an infield fly, and then you realize, yes, you're right, it is. So you make the appropriate call at that time, the infield fly, and the batter is out. Now, that doesn't mean that if a runner gets off the base and gets thrown out, if it's a result of you not calling it, then you can say, all right, runners go back to where they were at. Okay?
So in that case, if a runner got tagged out,
It does, because as an umpire, you have to say, look, I made a mistake on that, and so as a result, it was supposed to be infield fly, even though I didn't call it, and the runners are wondering, well, you didn't call it, so now I have to run. In that particular case, you're going to put it back on first and second, or first, second, and third, whichever. Agreed?
I try not to get into that situation.
Well, exactly. You don't want to.
I wouldn't, I don't know, because the pressure's on you. If you didn't call it as an umpire, it is incumbent on the manager and the players who know the rule also. They start running around, I would let it go. I would say, I lose the call. You should know the rule. You're gonna run, try to get the second because you think it's a forced play. You're on your own.
So a couple different interpretations. Me, I would kill it as soon as I realized it and said, I would say, no, dead ball, that's it, everybody go back, right? Especially at these ages. Now, if you're talking about high schoolers, college, etc., I would not, well, you better not as an umpire make a mistake if you're umpiring those. All right, so now we're getting into interference. So let me go back. I think I have, actually I have a video here for you. I have 3 videos for you. Let's see if I can do this right. Yeah, this might do a better way to do it. Oops, wrong one.
All right, now we're going to...
We don't need to see the fair foul. Here we go, this one.
Rule 2.0, an infield fly is a fair fly ball, not including a line drive or an attempted bunt, which can be caught by an infielder with ordinary effort when first and second, or first, second, and third bases are occupied before 2 are out. The pitcher, catcher, and any outfielder who stations himself in the infield on the play shall be considered infielders for the purpose of this rule. When it seems apparent that a batted ball will be an infield fly, the umpire shall immediately declare infield fly for the benefit of the runners. If the ball is near the baselines, the umpire shall declare infield fly if fair. The ball is alive, and runners may advance at the risk of the ball being caught, or retouch in advance after the ball is touched. The same is on any fly ball. If the hit becomes a foul ball, it is treated the same as any foul. Okay, now we're going to talk about the infield fly rule and how it's judged. We're going to show you some situations that are and are not infield flies, even though the ball is popped up in the infield. It's a judgment call based on the ability of the player to catch it with ordinary effort. In this example, although the ball is popped up in the infield, the judgment is made as to whether the infielder could catch the ball with ordinary effort. In this play, the fielder is running full speed and still can't get to the ball. Therefore, it is not an infield fly. The ball would be live and you would play the play. In this play, the ball is popped up in the infield, and although the fielder has to move a little bit, it would still be judged as ordinary effort, and this would be a declared infield fly. The batter is out. In this example, the fielder is unable to get underneath the ball, so this would probably not be judged as an infield fly. It has to be ordinary effort.
Right, if he's got his back to you.
In this example, the fielder catches the ball on the outfield grass, but it's still an infield fly because he was able to catch the ball with ordinary effort. The judgment is based upon the effort by the fielder, not where he is when he catches the ball.
A couple more.
Situation 15, infield fly rule. Runners on first and second with no outs. The batter pops up to the shortstop. The correct ruling is B. This is a double play. The infield fly rule is in effect anytime there are runners on first and second or bases loaded with less than 2 outs. The purpose of the rule is to protect the offensive team from the trick double play. Sometimes, however, runners trick themselves. If a fly ball is hit, other than a bunt or a line drive, and the umpire determines that an infielder should be able to catch it with ordinary effort, the umpire shall declare infield fly, batters out. This alerts the runners that regardless of the outcome of the infielder's attempt to catch the ball, the batter has been declared out and all forced plays removed. Since the ball remains alive and in play when the infield fly rule is invoked, runners may advance at their own risk. In this play, the runner on second was not forced because the batter had been called out. He left second base at his own peril and should be declared out. His base running mistake created the double play, not any trickery by the defensive team.
All right, one more.
Rule 708.
Wrong.
Simmons, fly ball shallow left. Back is Cosmo. He'll take it.
What do you guys think? No infield fly? Raise your hand if you don't think it's infield fly. Excuse me? Putting too much effort? This is Major League Baseball player. So that's where we talk about, you take a look at what is the quality of the play, the athletic ability of the individual or the players on the field. Major League Baseball player, you saw it, he was camped underneath it and he decided, I'm not going to, either he felt like somebody was behind him and decided not to. Now as an umpire, what is the umpire doing? The umpire is calling it at the top of the flight of the ball. That's where you're trying to make that particular call. So the umpire, probably the third base umpire in this particular situation, he's going back, he's taking a look, he looks and he says, he's underneath it, I've got infield fly, and he makes that particular call. And in this case, he does do that. He calls infield fly. He calls infield fly, so the batter is out.
And the bases are loaded and Fox can't believe it. This crowd has been crazy. This crowd's been crazy all night. I wonder if it affected their communication.
It's the batter, the batter.
Field fly rule. One umpire did. That's why Freddie Gonzalez is out. Well, this is a huge.
He's right underneath it. Plenty of time, right? He normally would make that catch. So I think that's
He wasn't camped.
No, they didn't agree with that call either. What about you guys? You guys agree with that call?
That's borderline.
Yeah, it's borderline.
The rule of thumb I use is can you legit, I mean, the ordinary measure is it a play. Can you legitimately expect someone to make a cheap double play here? These are major league arms, 90-foot bases. I suppose if he was camped there, even as deep as it was, they can make those throws and double guys off. So that's an infield fly.
That's a tough one. That's a tough call. I don't know. I don't know if I would have made it at the time. You know, in hindsight, I look at it and say, yeah, he could have caused that, so I'm going to call it. All right, so now we're going to talk about interference. All right, so if we take a look and we determine what type of interference is there. These are the types of interference, and we'll talk about the specific interference for each type as we go along. But you'll notice that there's a lot of different, or a number of different interference calls. So you have a batter, contact batter, runner, deliberate crash. We talked about an indeliberate crash earlier. Coach's interference, aiding the runner, spectator, and umpire. So believe it or not, as an umpire, you could interfere as well. So when they all occur, the ball is dead. Okay, so anytime interference occurs, you immediately call dead ball. Okay, this one it should probably be corrected a little bit because not in every situation there's an out, but in most of those situations there's an out. The only time there's not a guaranteed out is when it's umpire interference. And then the last one, the runners will return to base the last when they last touched at the time of the interference. There's interference on all these, as you know, it's all based on the offense, right? So interference is typically one that occurs on the offense. There's only a couple cases where it's not on the offense. There's a catcher's interference, which we will talk about, and then there's umpire interference. Okay? We'll get into each of these a little bit more detail. So when we take a look at umpire interference, there's only two ways you can have umpire interference. One would be if you interfere for the catcher's throw. So an example of that would be, as an umpire, you're behind the catcher, okay? He catches ball, trying to get a runner going to second base, and as he turns the throw, he hits you with his hand. You're going to say interference. You're going to let the play continue. So it's a delayed call. In that particular case, you're going to let the play continue. If the runner ends up at second base, you're going to say, I've got time. We've got umpire interference. The runner at second goes back to first. So if he's safe, he goes back. If he gets thrown out, then the play continues, and you don't even reference the interference at that particular time. Okay. The other type of umpire interference is if you're an umpire and you're on the infield and you get hit by a batted ball prior to it passing any other fielder besides the pitcher. Okay. We'll go over each of these in a little bit further. There's no umpire interference, though, if you're hit by a thrown ball, you're hit by the fielder if they run into you, or the runner runs into you. No interference there. Okay. So I do have a video for this one as well.
Francisco again batting with 2 on. Gomez takes off, throw to third, and now a throw to second. Gets the coming to score is Aoki. Man.
So, throw ball hits the umpire, it's a live ball, everything you do.
Inside in the infield. Aoki to score.
Or as an umpire, you do your best to stay out of the way. That's
just part of the field at that part of the field. Now, if he was out in the outfield, that would have been a dead ball, but it is not. And Bud Black calling for an explanation. Not much that on the throw. It doesn't really matter where he is. On a batted ball, that's the difference. But on a throw like that from an infielder.
Okay. So in that particular case, as they were talking about, it's on a throw. It's the umpire. It's a live ball. Question? Now, I will say, as an umpire on the majors level, you will always be on the outside of the diamond, so you really don't have to worry about getting hit by a ball before it passes a fielder. We'll talk about if you're inside. At 50-70, I usually come in. Do you come in at 50-70 as well? Or do you stay outside?
I'm staying out, but I've got screened a couple times in a game with you, and I'm debating.
Yeah, so 50-70, we'll talk a little bit about mechanics as an umpire, because I don't know if we go into that later or not. I think maybe when Jim comes along, he may go into the mechanics, but we'll talk a little bit about that. So you have different positions as an umpire. You have the plate umpire is always behind the plate, and then the base umpire, you've got the A position, which is out behind first base. You have the B position, which is going to be between first and second base. And you have the C position, which is going to be between second and third base. In the major league field, you're always going to be in the outfield for those, maybe right on the edge of the grass and the dirt is where I would set up, right? Closer to second base in both situations. Okay? When you're on the 50-70, the B position comes inside the infield. You can see where that umpire was at, right? He was inside. And you're going to be, if there's a runner at first, you're going to be closer to second base, but between first and second base. That's where, as an umpire, you want to be really aware so that any ball that's hit, you want to get out of the way of before it gets to a fielder. Okay. Questions on that? So let's go to the next one. So these are examples that are not interference, right? If you do a high five, handshakes, pats on the back, that's not interference, right? The important thing is that you're not assisting a runner, right? As long as you're not assisting the runner, it's not going to be called interference. Okay. Spectator interference is when a spectator reaches onto the field and interferes with the defensive player while they're trying to make a catch on the ball. If the defensive player is nowhere near the spectator and the spectator hits it, you're not going to call interference at that particular time. There must be a reasonable chance that that defender is going to make the catch. If the defensive player reaches into the stands, that's not interference. Okay? It needs to be out on the field. So if we take a look at some of these examples right here, when you look at this one, interference or no interference for spectator. Well, you guys see he's reaching over the wall. I would say he's reaching in just by the way the catcher's leaning. I'd say he's reaching in, so no spectator interference on that one. What about this one? This one, you guys probably all remember. Yeah. A lot of people thought that this was spectator interference. The reality is it wasn't. Moises was reaching into the stands when it gets touched. This one's pretty obvious. Right? He's reaching over in the field of play. That's spectator interference. In that particular case, as we talked about with interference, in this case the batter runner is out. All other runners go back to the base that they were at the time of the pitch. Okay. A strike is a legal pitch that is bunted foul. Okay. The batter is out and the ball is dead. If the batter bunts, fouls on a third strike. Should all know that, right? Bunting foul on third strike is an out. We talked about this a little bit earlier. If a ball touches a batter while it's over the strike zone, it's an immediate dead ball, and you call that a strike because it would have crossed the plate as a strike. So the strike zone, we'll talk a little bit about that. The strike zone is a space above home plate that is between the batter's armpits and the top of their knees. Okay? And then it goes from one corner of the plate to the other corner of the plate. If that ball, any part of that ball touches that plate, it's a strike. Okay? Now, as you guys probably know, at the younger ages, it makes it a little bit more difficult. It's a little more difficult for them to get the ball over the plate. So typically what you're going to do is give a little bit on the outside corners, inside corners of the plate, because we want those kids up there swinging, and so if it's close, you're going to call it a strike. So the most important thing for you as an umpire is always think strike, and then let the pitch tell you it wasn't a strike. Okay? Once again, if it goes over that plate, it's going to be considered a strike. Okay, now when you think about the strike zone, you want to look at what the whole zone is. Okay, so you've got the top of the armpits, you've got above the knees, and then you've got from plate to plate. Anything that crosses, even if it comes in on an angle, if it hits those corners, you're calling that a strike. And what this illustrates too is that the strike zone is based on where the batter is in their natural hitting stance. So if you take a look at Derek Jeter here, in his regular stance, where's the strike zone? It's a little bit wider, right? A little bit taller. But then as he takes a swing, he moves down just a little bit, and it closes up just a little bit. That's a strike zone, where he's getting ready to swing. Yes?
What about like those big kids who try to like bend over and more into the zone smaller?
Yep.
Do you still, like, if they were standing up, the zone would be much taller, but they should bend over and shorter?
Yeah.
What would you make the zone?
So the question is, what about whether it's a bigger kid or a smaller kid and they're crouching down, right? Okay. Is somebody really going to swing and hit the ball like this? No, they're not. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at him as he comes up, and you say he's going to take his warm-up swings right when he gets to the plate. And you say, all right, what's his normal stance? Now, if you don't see his warm-up swings, you're going to estimate it, right? You're not going to give him a strike zone that's this big. You're going to give him what his natural strike zone is. Okay, and that's where you're called. So the important thing, and what I'll do too, is if I'm behind the plate and I've got a batter who's going to go like this and he ducks down, okay? If it's anywhere close, I'm calling that a strike, right? Because you don't want him ducking down, you want him swinging. One thing I do, especially at the younger ages, is I typically try to get myself set. Obviously, you can't do it for the really small kids, but I try to get myself set so that my eyes are at the top part of the strike zone. And if I do that at the younger ages, then by being in that position, I know that if the ball goes above my eyes, it's not a strike. So that's how I'm able to get the top of the zone. The rest of it's all feel, right? And watching and seeing where that ball comes across. Other questions? Just another example of when somebody's bunting, you notice that it changes that strike zone as well. Notice that it's much lower at the top and a little bit higher at the bottom. Okay, a tag is the action of a fielder touching a base while holding the ball securely and firmly in his hand or glove, or touching a runner with the ball. Okay. You also have, when you think about it, it's firmly in his hand or his glove while touching the base. Okay, for the play at first base. In this particular example, as you see, the ball's not in the hand, even though he's touching, so he's not. It's almost like a catch in that particular regards, right? He doesn't have secure possession of it.
Does it matter what part of the base the fielder is touching the bag with?
What part of the base?
So what part of their body they're touching the bag with?
It does not. Any part of their body will work.
So
right?
like if they have
It's
a
a
ball
force.
in his hand and they like dive and touch the base with their glove, is that still?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So the question is, what if the fielder has the ball in his hand, okay, and then reaches over and touches first base with his glove? Is that an out? The answer is yes, it's an out. It's no different than touching it with your foot while it's in the glove. It's a force. As long as you have complete control. It's got to be in the glove of the hand. Which again, if it's up, in the elbow, on armpit, between the legs, whatever, it's not going to count, right? All right, this one's got a lot of information for you, and for the most part, the good thing is that you guys aren't going to have to worry about lineups when you're there. You're going to let the coaches worry about the lineups, and I believe it's a continuous batting order still. Is that correct? For all levels? All levels. So it's a continuous batting order. So in this particular case, what you're going to really focus on is if a coach brings it to your attention that a player on the other team has not gotten their 6 defensive outs. Okay? And I don't believe it requires 6 consecutive because we've got the continuous batting order. Is that correct, Jim? Right? Yeah. So that's going to be the coach's work, so you guys really don't have to worry about that when you're out in the field. This is something that you want to watch for. I've seen it happen, or I've seen it try to happen, and that is, the important thing is that once a pitcher gets up on that pitcher's plate, and they start warming up, they must pitch to that batter. At least to that batter. Okay? Unless they're injured for whatever reason. And in that particular case, if they're injured, then for the most part, they're going to be taken off the field, then you put a replacement. Once a replacement comes in and has their warm-up, they then have to pitch to that batter. Unless they get injured, right? Questions on that? So as soon as they get, now, let's say a first baseman comes out and he picks up the ball, he stands by the mound waiting for the pitcher to come out. You're going to make him pitch to that batter? Excuse me? Let's say he's on the mound. No. He didn't make any warm-ups. He's not trying to deceive who's actually pitching. He's just waiting. He's going to hand the pitcher the ball. Right? So only if they start taking their warm-ups. Once they take the warm-up, then they're responsible for pitching to that next batter. This is something that you may get occurring even with especially with the consecutive everybody in the batting order. And that is that once a player goes out into the field, okay, they don't have to, whether they announce a substitution or don't announce a substitution, it's legalized once they're out there, so it's assumed that the substitution is approved at that point. This is something that we would worry about more at the district level when we get into the tournaments than you're going to have to worry about at your levels. And I know both of you guys are very well aware of what constitutes a substitution and not. Now, earlier, we were talking about spectators and what happens if they get a little unruly. And the reality is that the responsibility and actions of the spectators falls on the board of directors or the game coordinator who was out on the field that time. So if there's somebody in the stands that is being too loud, maybe swearing, whatever it is, you don't address them ever. You go directly to the game coordinator and ask them to handle that. We only, as umpires, have control over what's going on the field, not what's going on off the field.
Now, if they're an adult and there is no game coordinator there, they address the spectator?
No,
Okay.
never,
Not-
never. So in that particular case, what I would do, even though this states that it's not the manager, and if there's no board of directors, there's no what I would ask the manager to say, could you please go ask your parent to keep it down for me? Okay. Now, if we want to go into a little bit further, if the spectator continues and they don't leave the field appropriately, what you can do is you can call all the players off the field, have them in the dugout until that spectator leaves, and then resume the game again. Okay. I should hope at this level you never get to that situation. Questions on that, guys? All right. This kind of is the same thing along those lines. So no manager, coach, or player shall at any time, whether from the bench or the playing field or elsewhere, incite or try to incite by word, sign, demonstration by spectators, use language in any manner that's refer or to reflect upon another player, coach, umpire, or any other spectator, right? So you want to hear words of encouragement from the coaches, and you don't want to hear anything else out of them, right? So just get, it's not like you're going to be radar ears trying to hear what's going on. But if you do hear something that is inappropriate, nip it in the bud right away. Now notice that it says on here that the fielders, they can be saying, hey, batter, batter, as long as they're not at the time of the pitch doing anything that's going to raise that cadence or intimidate the batter, such as saying swing, getting really loud at the end of those cadences. As long as it's pretty consistent, you absolutely, as a team, can be rooted for your own players out in the field. Just don't let it get out of control if it starts to get out of control where you see the pitches varying based on the time of the pitch or at the time of the pitch. Okay. Questions? Now we get into some situations where we try to determine how many runs we'll score when a third out of an inning is a result of an appeal or the failure of a runner to touch a base. So the key when you take a look at it from this particular perspective is that if the appeal is on a runner or a batter runner missing first base, no runs are going to score. Okay? It's no different than, think about at the you got runners at runner at third with nobody on, balls hit, 2 outs, balls hit to the second baseman, he throws the runner out at first, it's a force, that run at third doesn't count, right? Because of the out at first. If there's any appeal on a runner at base to which he was forced, so the same thing applies. If the force was at second base and the out is made at second base prior to the run scoring, or even after the run scores, what do you got? Does the run score? You have a force at second base? No run score. Okay. If the appeal is on a batter runner or runner at any other base, it's going to be based on where the runners are at the time of the appeal. If the runners are ahead of the appealed runner, they score. The appealed runner absolutely does not score, and any of the runners behind the appealed runners do not score. I don't think we have a video on this one, though, do we, Jim? It's probably one of the most confusing rules that are out there. It'd be nice to have something like that. So let me see if I can give an example of this. Let's say you have, bases loaded. Batter runner hits a home run. As they're rounding the bases, batter runner is so excited he hit a home run, he misses first base. Everybody scores, right? Defense said, wait, he missed the ball, or he missed first base. They go and they properly peel first base, they tag it, umpire calls them out. How many runs scored? 0. 0 runs, because the peel was made at first before the batter runner got there. Right? Very good, guys.
Is that with 2 outs or is that?
In that particular case, 2 outs. I should have given you the out, sorry. That was with 2 outs.
If there was less than 2 outs, would they score?
If there were less than 2 outs, would the how many runs would score in that particular case? It'd be 2. Correct. Good. Very good. Let's see. When the winning run is scored, in the last half of a regulation game, or at the half of that inning, of an extra inning, as a result of a base on ball, hit by batter, or any other play where the bases are full, which forces the runners to advance, okay, the umpire shall not declare the game ended until the runner at third, or the leading runner, touches home, okay, and the batter runner touches first. Okay. So they both have to happen for that to be an end of the game. Okay, so we've got a video on this one.
Confusion, and
Jim was umpire the Little League World Series in 2011. So protests, you know, in regular league play, we do everything that we can, and if I remember in Little League in Naperville, no protests, right? Everything has to be taken care of prior to the next pitch at that particular time. So the key for you guys is that make sure you understand the rules. Okay? You want to know the rules better than the coaches know the rules. So take that Little League book. I know the umpires in this room that through the districts review that all the time. And you may think we're crazy for reading the rule book, but the bottom line is you need to know the rules. Right? So make sure you do that, and you're not going to have any issues if you're the one who knows the rules, because I guarantee you that we know them better than the coaches do. Okay?
And would you mind letting me interject too?
Yep.
I'm just trying to make, well, I'm going to protest this game. Well, the protest goes to me and Mr. Vera here. And umpire judgment is not a reason to protest a game. All done. Nice and easy. Okay? So don't let anyone intimidate you into thinking that they're going to protest, therefore you should change your call.
The other thing, any coach verbally abuses you on the field, you need to contact Julie. Make sure you have her cell phone number or her email address. If you feel that a coach was out of line, send a message explaining what happened. We will call that coach in to explain to her and I why he did what he did and what he thought he was trying to accomplish. We have your back. You got to tell us.
There's actually absolutely zero reason for an umpire to get in you guys' face at all. Period.
Yeah.
Zero. They may ask you questions, make sure that you understood what the rule was, maybe try to make you question your judgment, stay with your judgment, make the call, and move forward. Once the ball becomes dead and the runners return to their base, it's up to the umpire to put the ball back into play. So one of the things that we're taught as umpires that for anytime the ball is dead, you get everybody back, pitcher is on the rubber, the catcher's waiting to accept the ball, the batter's in the batter's box ready to go, you're then going to say play and you're going to put the ball back into play. Okay? Anytime the ball is put out of play, is time, dead ball, etc. That goes for a foul ball as well. Foul ball is a dead ball, right, as we talked about earlier. So as an umpire, you want to put that back into play. At the time everybody's ready, you say play. Every time that the ball is considered dead, put it back into play. Once again, make sure that all the runners have retouched their base. And at the 50-70, foul ball, they got to go back and retouch their base, then they can go off, right? Must retouch the base. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about dead balls. And these are dead balls where the runner has to return. So an illegally batted ball is one that we'll talk about a little bit, but an illegally batted ball will be one where you immediately call dead ball and the runner's return. A foul ball that's not caught, we just talked about that, it's a dead ball, so you're going to call it foul ball, and then you're going to put the ball into play. We talked about plate interference, plate umpire interference earlier. Once again, plate interference by an umpire is a delayed dead ball. And in that particular case, you let the play continue. If the runner is put out, you don't say anything. If they're not put out, you call time, dead ball, put the runners back. If the runner is called out for batting out of turn, we'll talk about this a little bit later. The proper batter is out, all runners return. Dead ball at that time. And then the last thing, if there's any type of batter interference, with the exception if the runner is thrown out. Okay, same, it's very similar to umpire interference in that particular regards. Dead ball where the runners advance one base. We talked about if it's above majors, right? So if it's 50-70s, if it's a balk that's not followed by a pitch or a play, it's now a dead ball, and the runners advance one base. What is it again if it's a majors and below and a infraction occurs by the pitcher? what do you call?
Legal pitch.
Illegal pitch, right? What's awarded for an illegal pitch?
Ball.
A ball to the batter, correct. Okay, a dead ball when runners attempting to steal on a pitch, which the catcher's interference occurs. So if a runner is at first, he's trying to steal second base, catcher interference occurs, you're going to award them one base. We'll talk a little bit more about catcher's interference later as well. This one you don't see very often, however, I think it was the Little League World Series, might have been last year, where a ball got stuck in the catcher's protector. They had these new, I don't know if it was Under Armour or Nike, they had these new chest protectors and they had these little flaps in it. And the ball bounced and I think it was the Japanese player, it bounced up and it got caught inside those flaps. In that particular case, it get lodged in the catcher's mask or his equipment, and so the runners get to advance one base. It's interesting. That was one of the few times I see it get stuck in equipment. Yeah, question?
Always like, I don't know, on the foul ball line, get stuck in a fence in a way that they couldn't like grab it out right away.
A foul ball?
Or no, like a fair ball.
A pitch ball? A pitch ball?
And it didn't really go under the fence, and it got stuck, and it took them like an excessively long time to try and get it. Can you try and call time or like?
Yeah, so at that particular point, any ball that gets stuck in the fence, okay, as an umpire, that becomes a dead ball, and then you're going to award the bases based on when it occurred. So in this particular case, let's say it was a pitched ball bounce, gets stuck in the fence, you're going to call dead ball, and you're going to award the runners one base. Okay? So it's very similar to being stuck in the catcher's paraphernalia in that regards. Same thing if it goes underneath the fence. I don't think in Naperville we've got anywhere where it can get underneath the fence though, on a pitch ball.
What about the shortstop throws it at the home and gets stuck in the fence?
Shortstop throws it at home, and that, I guess it would depend on when it occurred. If it's the first throw from an infielder from the time the ball was hit, it's going to be 2 bases from the time of pitch. If it's other than the first throw, let's say it's a relay from the outfielder into the shortstop and then it gets stuck, it's still a dead ball, and it's 2 bases from the time of the throw. And what that means, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along, is the time of the throw, where are the runners at the time the throw is released. Okay. A pitch touches a runner as they're trying to score. You're not going to see this at the major level, but you may at the 50-70 level. Okay. Runner at third, he tries to steal. Pitcher pitches the ball anyways. The runner slides in the home and the pitch hits him. Okay, it's a dead ball, as we talked about earlier. Anytime the ball hits a batter, or in this case the runner, it's an immediate dead ball at that particular time because it was a pitch, and all runners move up 1 base. Now, what would you do with the pitch? How would you call that ball or strike? Somebody want to take a guess? Let's say it's over the strike zone. What do you call that? Strike. If the pitch was not over the strike zone, you're going to call dead ball, runners move up 1 base. If a fielder catches a fly ball and falls into dead ball territory. Okay, the key here is that they have to fall into dead ball territory, not step into dead ball territory. They actually have to be on the ground. Okay, at that particular time, you're going to call dead ball, award the runners 1 base. Okay, we talked about this one. Pitcher throws the ball and it bounds into dead ball territory, whether it sticks in the fence, goes underneath the fence, hits a pebble somehow funny and bounces over the dugout, whatever it is. If it's a pitch, it's 1 and it goes into dead ball territory, it's 1 base. Question, guys, on the 1 base? Oh, this one. One more. Umpire hit by a batted ball before it's passing fielder. So we talked a little bit about that one, right? The umpire, if you're in the B position or C position on the 50-70 mound, and it hits you prior to it passing a fielder outside of the pitcher, It's an immediate dead ball at that point, and everybody moves up one base. Yeah.
That last one,
Yeah.
ground, line shot, where it's an umpire in the infield.
Yep.
So it's a basic. If you got a guy third, he's not forced to advance. Is he frozen or does he go to home plate? I think he's frozen.
Runners, he goes up one base, does he not, Joe? Yeah, one base.
It's a base.
One
Even
base.
though there's no.
Yeah, because at that particular time, it's assumed it's a base hit, so everybody moves up one, regardless, it's not a force at that particular time. Yeah. All right, now we talk about the late dead ball situations. So we talked earlier about a couple of situations of delayed dead ball, so now we'll go into those a little bit more specifically. Catcher's interference followed by a batter ball. So catcher's interference, and I think we have another slide in this to go in more detail, so I'll do that a little bit later. But if it is a catcher's interference, it's a delayed dead ball, so you wait till everything happens, then you make your appropriate call. Plate umpire's interference, another one that we talked about, right? Getting ready to throw the ball to throw a run around, but the catcher's arm hits the plate umpire. If batter's interference is followed by a player to throw, okay, you're going to wait. If the batter interferes with the catcher somehow, some way, you're going to wait to see what happens. If the runner is thrown out, you ignore the interference. So it's a delayed dead ball. If the runner is not thrown out, you're going to call time, and you're going to make the appropriate call at that time. Balk, illegal pitch, followed by, here's the rule for you, 8.05 in the proof ruling. A balk or an illegal pitch that's followed by a pitch or a throw, you let it continue. If the batter hits it, you make the appropriate calls at that particular time, but you wait till the play's over, and then you call your time. And then obstruction, in the case of obstruction, only in 7.06B, and I'm trying to remember what that is off the top of my head.
That's when, B is when the play is not being made on
the runner, right. So, and we do talk about this as well a little bit later. When it's, let's say the runner's rounding first base, the first baseman gets it away, umpire calls obstruction on that, but the play, there's no play being made on there. It's a delayed dead ball. You let them continue, and then you make the appropriate call after the play is over. If they get into second base, and that's where they normally would have gotten, you're not going to make any call, and you just ignore the obstruction at that point.
In each of those cases, the manager who is going to be harmed by it has to take the call or not.
What was, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question.
You said earlier it's like an NFL penalty, you can refuse to accept, so in each of those cases you can refuse to.
Not any, there's only a couple of instances where a delayed dead ball does the manager have a choice of what they would pick.
But the catcher's interference and...
Catcher's interference, there's no choice in that particular one. If the runner is thrown out, he's out. If he's not thrown out, go back. Catcher's interference, I was thinking plate umpire interference. Catcher's interference would be one of those where the manager would have a choice, either take the play or take the interference. Yep. All right, now we're going to go into the batter. And so Rule 6.0 in the rule book will cover all things associated with the batter. You guys are familiar with this. Batter is going to take his position in the batter's box, and it's really the umpire's responsibility to make sure that the batters are ready in the box and ready to accept the pitch to keep the game moving, right? You're going to want them get in. All right, let's go, batter. Let's get up there, get in the batter's box. Don't make me call a strike on you, those type of things. Just get them in, get them going. We do ask at the neighborhood league, make sure that when the batter's in the batter's box, that they're ready. But also, in between pitches, keep 1 foot in the batter's box. So if they're getting their sign from their coach, keep 1 foot in the batter box, and keep keeps them away from wandering around, taking swings, playing with their batting gloves, etc. 1 foot in the batter's box. That's what you want to do as an umpire, is to make sure that you tell your coaches and the players that to keep that foot in there.
And the manager will remind me of that this year. We really want you to call that this year.
So, you know, the reality there is just to keep the game moving. Nobody on the field, nobody in the stands wants the game to drag on, right? So the more you can keep them hustling in and out of the dugout and into the batter's box, the better it will be for you and for everybody else that's there. Once again, once they're in the batter's box, they shouldn't leave the batter's box at any time once the pitcher starts his motion or gets set, unless they ask and you grant them time. The penalty is if the pitcher pitches and the batter moves out as the pitch is coming and you do not call time, you're going to call the pitch, whether it's a ball or strike, but in most cases, it's as long as it's close enough, it doesn't bounce in, doesn't hit the backstop, you're probably going to call that a strike. Okay, this is where it talks, we talk a little bit about where the batter can stand. So they have to be completely with both feet in the batter's box. So if you take a look at the next diagram, and we start with number 1. Okay, number 1, not completely in the batter's box either. That foot's halfway or north, 3/4 of the way out, only 1/4 of the way in the batter's box. Number 2, he's got a little bit sticking out there, so that's not in the batter's box. Has to be within the white lines. Number 3 is within the white lines and on the white lines, so that one's okay. Right? So you can be on the line, you just can't be outside of it. 6 is no, 5 is no, and 4 you can see they're completely inside. Right? So that's the important piece. The feet must be completely inside, which includes the white lines of the batter's box. Right? And that's at the time of the pitch. Batter is out when that batter attempts to hit a third strike and is touched by the ball. We talked about that a little bit earlier, right? Batter hit by the ball but swings, that's a strike. If it's with 2 strikes on it, that's an out. Okay. What happens to the ball? Is it still in play? Nope, it's a dead ball. Once it hits the batter, it's a dead ball immediately. All right, this is something that we talked about. The question that you had earlier is, are the hands part of the bat? We've already agreed that no, the hands are not part of the bat. So what's your call on this one? What are you going to do? When somebody tell me loud what you're going to do with this call.
Strike.
You're going to call a strike on the batter? Okay. What else are you going to do? Dead ball. Dead ball, that's a strike on the batter. Okay. Coach comes out, what are you going to tell him? Sorry? I couldn't hear you. You were going to say something, right? I'm sorry, I can't hear what you were saying. Yeah, that's okay.
So here's what you're most likely to see. The kid, and just like in this picture, swings, and the ball hits his hands while he's swinging, but the ball goes forward to the pitcher. And in the chaos, the pitcher makes a play and throws the runner out at first. And everybody's going to be confused because they think he hit the ball. You saw it or heard it hit his hands. This is what they call a dead ball swinging strike. Regardless of what happens, you kill the play, and it's a strike on the batter and it stays in the batter's box. You'll have to bring it back from first. And I guarantee you this will have to do at least once this season. It's very common.
Sometimes as an umpire, you can't really see and you're listening. What did you hear? And what you hear is going to tell you a lot what's going to what actually occurred. The other thing is, you're typically going to see that, what's that batter going to do? He's going to be going, oh, that hurt, right? So listen to what you heard, what you see, and make the call. As soon as it happens, and that's what you, in your judgment, occurred, you immediately just say, dead ball, time, dead ball. Even, and I guarantee the pitcher's still going to pick it up, he's going to throw it, but the more emphatic you are about it, the better off you're going to be, because somebody's going to hear that you were saying it before the out was actually made out at first base. Batter is out when a fair ball touches the batter before touching a fielder. It's no different than if a runner is getting hit before it's passing a field goal. In that particular case, completely out of the batter's box, running over the first base in fair territory, the ball hits the batter, he's out. Here we go again. 6.05G. Batter's out when, after hitting or bunting a fair ball, his bat hits the ball a second time in fair territory. In this particular case, the bat is doing the hitting, right? Goes to swing, comes back around, somehow he's still got the bat and hits the ball a second time in fair territory, batter's out. Okay. I want to say, give me 1 second, I want to say it was in the pros, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if anybody remembers seeing this. It might have been Chipper Jones, maybe been the batter, but I could be wrong on that, where he actually swung and hit the ball one time, and on the follow-through he hit the ball again. Ended up being like a line drive base hit out to left field. Umpires didn't catch it because it occurred. It was the first time I've ever seen that, where it actually hit it twice as it was going through. Very strange. Question?
Let's say he batter hits it, and then he flips his bat or whatever, and that's in foul, and then he hits it in the foul territory, and when the bat's flipped, it ricochets off the bat. Is that still a fair ball?
Yeah. So let me see if I've got the question right. Swings the bat, flips it over in the foul territory, hits foul territory, rolls into fair territory, and then it hits the ball in fair territory.
It hits the bat's flipped in the foul territory, and it ricochets off the bat in the foul territory.
So if the bat's in foul territory, and then the ball in foul territory hits the bat. Okay, in that particular regards, we're going to the next one. I believe this is going back. Okay. If the ball does the hitting, which is what you just described there, whether it's in fair or foul territory, if the ball's hitting into the bat, you've got nothing. Right? It just continues and the play is live. Okay. In your particular situation, if the bat's in foul territory and then the ball hits the bat in foul territory, what do you have? What's that? It is part of the field, but what do you have? Bat's in foul territory, ball hits it in foul territory, foul ball. So once again, you're going to stop and say foul ball, get him going again. What are you going to do when everybody's ready? You put the ball in play again. Batter's out. We're running the last half distance from home to first. While the ball's being fielded to first base, he runs outside of the 3-foot lane. Everybody knows what the 3-foot lane is. You see it on the right. You have to run in between them. Both feet have to be inside the lane. In that particular case, if in the umpire's judgment, by being outside of that, interferes with a throw, or the fielder accepting the throw, then the batter runner is going to be out. The two key things here is that the ball must be thrown. So if the catcher gets it and he doesn't throw it, you've got nothing. In addition, the throw must be reasonably catchable. Catcher throws it 20 feet high over the first baseman, you're not going to call anything, and you're not even going to reference whether that batter runner was outside the lane. We've got a video here. I will show you.
The players and I are now going to create some plays that deal with the running lane situation. Rule 605K. A batter is out when, in running the last half of the distance from home base to first base, while the ball is being fielded to first base, he runs outside to the right of the 3-foot lane or inside to the left of the foul line, and in the umpire's judgment, in so doing, interferes with the fielder taking the throw at first base, except that he may run outside to the right of the 3-foot lane or inside to the left of the foul line to avoid a fielder attempting to field a batted ball. All right, guys want to take position? The running lane requires a lot of judgment and a lot of knowledge about how to make the judgment. The rule is that the runner is out if he interferes with the fielder taking the throw at first base. He's not out just because he runs out of the lane, nor is he safe because he runs in the lane. You have to judge whether there was interference with the fielder taking the throw, not the fielder making the throw. In this first example, we're going to show that the runner runs entirely outside the lane the entire distance to first base, but he's not out because he did not interfere with the fielder taking the throw. Another thing that you have to consider in making your judgment as to whether the runner has interfered or not is the fact that first base is in fair territory. The runner has to come out of the lane in the last step or two in order to touch the base, so you wouldn't call him out for interference if something happened there that was unintentional on his last step at the base. On this example, the runner is running outside the lane and he gets hit by the throw. In this case, the call is pretty easy. He's outside the lane, so you're going to judge that he intentionally tried to interfere with the throw. So if he's hit by the throw, he has interfered with the fielder taking the throw while he was outside the lane. That's interference. This is another example of the runner outside the lane and being hit by the throw. It's a little bit different. It's a case where he could be interfering even if he wasn't hit because he's outside the lane. It's any kind of interference to the fielder trying to take the throw that would be part of your judgment. Interference with the throw must be intentional, and the fact that he's outside the lane is helping you make your judgment that he was intentionally trying to interfere. To summarize this rule, just remember that interference with a thrown ball must be intentional. The running lane is just helping you make the decision of intent or not. If he's entirely outside the lane, the whole distance to first base, then it's going to make your judgment pretty easy that it's interference. Just remember, he's not out just because he's outside the lane, nor is he safe just because he's inside the lane. The primary decision is whether or not he interfered with the fielder taking the throw.
So we're going to have a piece of clarification.
Certainly.
Intent is not part of that. It doesn't matter whether he intentionally interfered with the throw from the catcher. Right? He just interfered with it. Intent, the guy talking in the video is wrong. He said that if he did not intend to create interference, there would be no interference. That's not correct. It is interference 100% of the time when the first baseman cannot catch the ball because of the runner being in the ball. All right-hand batters start out well inside. 3 feet is where the right-hand batter's box is. They all start out running to the inside of that box. You got to watch it. Make sure they eventually get in.
Are you doing mechanics later, Jim?
I can.
I was only asking because I'll just go over something real quick to that. As an umpire, the mechanic you want, so assume that this is first base line, right? And the mechanic that you want as a plate umpire is you're back here, the batter hits it, he's running to first, you're going to let him clear, and you're going to go around the catcher, and then what you're going to do is you're going to be right over first base line, right? And you're going to foul, and you're watching, right? The main thing that you're watching, assuming nobody else is on base, the main thing you're watching here is the in the lane. And then the other thing, as we talked about, you're then going to take a look at the first base and make sure he's got his foot on the bag afterwards, making sure that is he in the lane, where is the throw, how was the throw made, and then make your call appropriately. You can even follow up a little bit behind the runner too. Gives you a little bit better look at it, right? As long as you're behind the catcher in that regard. Batter's out for illegal action when hitting an illegally batted ball. We talked about this a little bit earlier, and then we'll go into more detail. It's one hit by the batter with one or both feet on the ground, entirely out of the batter's box. Everybody understand what I mean by that? Foot needs to be completely out of the batter's box. Number one, and it must be on the ground. Number two. Okay, so let's go over a couple of these and you guys tell me, what do we got here? What do we got? Say it loud. Somebody said illegal? It's not illegal. Yeah, I'll do it by a show of hands next time. Whoop, back. This one's legal. Foot must be entirely outside of the box. He's got part of his foot still in the box, right? All right, show of hands, legal or illegal? Raise your hand. hands, show of hands.
Before you guys
Legal?
vote,
Yeah,
the
legal.
issue here is, it's not easily seen in the video, is his foot's in the air.
Puts in the air.
Not
Legal?
touching the ground.
Legal, raise some hands. Illegal. This is legal. Remember what I said, two things are important. Completely out of the box and entirely on the ground. So if it's not entirely on the ground, that makes this one.
So you have to make contact with the ball during this particular instance?
He does have to make contact. It's an illegally batted ball. Good question. Yep.
By the way, I've never seen that happen, and it's awful hard to do.
What's that?
To hit the baseball.
Oh, with 1 foot up?
Up in the air.
You said the foot entirely on the ground. I mean, if the toe is touching, that's the
Correct. Touching the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point. It doesn't have to be the whole part of the foot.
Guys, remember, you may be working the fourth game that day, there may not even be a batter's box. So don't try to enforce this really rigid if you don't have a batter's box.
Yeah. You only got to force this on the first.
Use common sense.
Almost the same thing, foot's in the air, legal or legal, show of hands. Foot's entirely in the air. Is it illegal? Nobody, good. Okay, what do we got here, legal? Raise your hand. Nobody? Illegal? Right. Entirely outside of the box, foot on the ground. Right?
Some people will try and tell you that because he's touching home plate, he should be out. Coaches will say, well, his foot was touching home plate. Only if his foot is entirely out of the batter's box is he out. Not because he's touching home plate, but because his foot's out of the batter's box. You'll see this most likely when they bunt.
Legal? Anybody? Correct. Illegal. All right. Now the reality is, you're an umpire behind the plate, this is what you see. How do you make that call? Let me explain how I typically will do this. All right? I take a look to see where the batter is set up. Every time they get into the box, I look to see where the batter is set up. You know why I do that? Two reasons. One, is he entirely in the box so that he can make the pitch? Number one. Number two, it helps me to determine, based on the swing, is there even a chance he's going to be going outside of that box? If you've got the batter's box, let's say this is the edge of the batter's box towards the plate, and he's back here, and this is the front of the batter's box, there's probably no way that that batter's stepping entirely out of that batter's box, right? However, if he's right up on the edge, right up here, almost any big step, he's going to be stepping out of that batter's box. So what I do then is then after the ball is hit, put in play, if I have time to do that, I'm going to look down to see where his foot was at. It's not very easy to catch this. You have to be on your toes, that's for sure. But as Jim said, you got to be absolutely sure. If there's any question in your mind, don't make the call. Batter is out for illegal action if the batter interferes with the catcher's fielding or throwing by stepping out of the batter's box or making any other movement that hinders the catcher's play at home base. So the important thing here is if they make any other move that hinders the catcher, it doesn't have to be out of the batter's box. It can be in the batter's box and still hinder the catcher. Okay, a lot of coaches will say, well, he's in the batter's box, umpire. Okay, but he stepped, even though he's in there, he stepped or elbowed or did something to hinder that catcher. Okay? So we do have a video here. Let's see here. I thought we had a video. Here we go.
Out. So you don't have to pitch to him if you don't want. Runner goes swing and a miss, throw down the second, and it's a little too tall, and they're going to call interference on Hamilton and send the runner back. Again. He's out. They're going to call him out. Well, let's see what happens. strikeout. That's the inning. Now, did he step over the plate? If he stayed in the batter's box, it could be just interference and they send the runner back. But let's see, they're calling the runner out. He's trying to get off the field.
It's a double play. The inning is over. Let's take another look here. Where's Hamilton end up?
See if he's in the batter's box. No, now he's on home plate, and Santana had to make contact for that ball to be made. Did he touch it?
Yeah, throw it on his helmet, or else he's getting hit right in the helmet, right? We're going to take a 5-minute break here, guys, because this one I need you guys mentally prepared to understand batting out of order. Okay, so 5-minute break. Yeah, good question, good question. I think that's what they were saying at the end there, is because, maybe they didn't say it specifically, he goes, but he said it doesn't really face the runners. Correct, I went out and back. Yeah, I think and that's a good thing I'll bring up. It talks about the batter being down, right? But because it's the third out, the runners out. Or because maybe that's what it's called, because he was already out. Exactly. There's 2 outs. No, I'm better with it. There's 2 kids to move to the school. That's right, yeah. So it wasn't really, that's what we used to like leave something, right? Exactly. Yeah. All right, we'll get going. We're going to talk about batting out of order. All right. So, in batting out of order, if anyone is called out, it's the proper batter. Remember that. The proper batter is the one who was called out. The proper batter is the one who was supposed to be batting. An improper batter is legalized by any pitch or any play or attempted play after the improper batter batted. So if the batter who was batting out of turn gets on base and a pitch is made or a play is attempted, they now become the legal batter at that particular time. The umpire does not bring it to anyone's attention. It's not your responsibility ever, and you don't do it. If somebody gets up to that plate that you know is not supposed to be batting, you don't say a darn thing. You let everything occur, and then you make the appropriate ruling after somebody else brings it to your attention. If the proper batter is on base, you're then going to skip over him for the purposes of calling the proper batter out or determining the next proper batter. Well, as we go forward, this will be explained a little bit better. It's a tough one to put in writing. Once it's brought to your attention, as I talked about, then you're going to straighten the whole thing out. If it's appealed after the improper batter completes his time at bat but before the next pitch or play, the proper batter is called out, as we talked about. The improper batter gets a hit. The coach comes out and questions it. You guys look at it and agree that was the wrong batter. The batter who was supposed to be batting is now called out. You're going to remove the player from base. Any runners who advance due to the actions of the improper batter will now go back. Any outs that occur at the time, they're going to stand. The next batter, whose name follows in the battering order of the proper batter, is now the one who is going to bat. As I said, through words this is hard to comprehend, and we'll do some diagrams coming up shortly here. If the appeal is made before the improper batter completes his time at bat, so now you've got somebody up, coach from the other team says, wait a second, that's not the batter who's supposed to be batting. Okay? If that occurs, then the proper batter can come back in, and then he'll just inherit the count that the improper batter had at that particular time. Any base runners who moved up prior to that action occurring stay on the bases that they were at. Okay, question?
No one called out.
In that particular scenario, the question is anybody called out? And the answer is no, nobody's called out at that time. Okay? If it's noticed that the improper batter is batting before the end of that at bat, The offensive manager can put the proper batter in at any time without an infraction, and that proper batter just inherits the current count that that improper batter had. So if it's 1 ball, 2 strikes, the offensive manager realizes I've got the wrong batter out there. He can bring in the new batter, or the proper batter, and now the proper batter has that 1 and 2 count. If I'm the manager of the other team, I don't say anything until the play is completely done, then I bring up whether it's batting on the turn or not. If the appeal is made after the next pitch play or attempted play, the improper batter now becomes legalized. All base runners who have advanced become legalized, and the batting order picks up from where that improper batter batted. So we'll go into some examples here, and I think you'll start to get it in these examples. So let's say this is the batting order, and Tom is number 4 batter. He leads off with a single. And then Adam comes in. He's not supposed to be batting, right? He's the improper batter. He gets a single. So what has to happen now is when Paul comes up to bat, the defensive coach has to, before any pitch, play, or appeal, or attempted play, defensive coach will say, wait a second, they batted out of order. Okay? So in that particular case, if we go, Sam was the proper batter at that time, right? So Sam is the one who is called out. Sam's called out, then what happens? Who bats next?
Is Adam already on base?
Yes.
Let's go one more step. I think, there we go. Tom returns to first base. Adam bats again. You bring Adam back. So right, he would have been in first and second. So what happens? Tom goes back to first. Sam's called out. Adam then bats because now he becomes the proper batter again. Okay? Let's go to the next one.
One more question.
Yeah.
What will happen most of the time, fellas, the manager will catch his 2 or 3 pitches in, like Tony mentioned. They don't know what to do. They catch it too early. They don't wait until that guy either hits or gets out. And they'll say, if the wrong guy's out, you just switch it. And they'll say somebody should be out, nobody should be out.
Nobody's out in that case.
Same count, put the right guy in there.
Now we got a situation where Adam's the proper batter, so Adam's supposed to be batting now. But John gets up and he hits a single. Okay. Now you got Paul who comes up, he gets a pitch. Right? So, what do we have at this particular time? Just out of curiosity. Say it again? So the response was Paul becomes the proper batter. So here's what happens in this one, and we'll try to take this a little bit slow. So while Adam was supposed to be the right batter, and John got up and he hit a single, once the pitch was thrown to Paul, that made John's at bat legal, and his was legalized. So who is supposed to be the next batter? Say it loud, guys. Tom. Tom is now the proper batter because John was legalized.
Wait, so they skip, so they go back?
Yeah, so what happens, because of the fact that it became legalized, John's at bat became official, right? And so the next batter is the next batter in the batting order, which was Tom. Okay? But then Paul came up because he's like, well, I'm supposed to be up next because I was told by the coach I'm supposed to bat second this inning. And he goes up there and he takes a pitch, which is why it legalized John. Okay? As we talked about, must be appealed before the pitch. Since the pitch occurred, John became legal. Okay? As we talked about, right? First pitch to Paul legalizes John. Tom will replace Paul and assume his account. So in this particular case, Yeah, this one's a goofy one because of how far you jump around. But in this case, so John's the right batter. Then when Paul received the pitch, the defensive manager says, wait a second, John can't hit. He wasn't supposed to be batting. Adam was supposed to bat. Okay, but because the pitch already occurred, what you do is you say, the appeal occurred, John became official. Now what you do is you put Tom up there. He's the proper batter, and he's going to take that 1 ball, no strike count, or no ball, 1 strike count.
So is that saying that in that order we skip 3 batters there, or 2?
Say that again?
In that order we skip 3 batters because Paul was batting?
No, essentially what you're doing is you're jumping from Adam, who was supposed to lead off the inning, to now John led off the inning, and you're going through the heart of your order again.
So
Adam was supposed to be the first batter. But John went out there first. Okay? This can get pretty confusing, but the thing to understand is to first figure out who was supposed to be the proper batter. Once you know who the proper batter was, then that gives you the opportunity to understand everything else that occurs.
So here's a rule of thumb. No 2 questions. If you're asked about the batter before a pitch is made, okay, the first question is, who's the proper batter? Proper batter's out. And then the second question is, who bats after the proper batter? That will get you to 98%. Won't get you through this one.
Yeah, this one's a tough one.
This one is harder. But in this one, since a pitch was made, everything that happened before that pitch is now legal. So if no pitch is made, ask who's the proper batter and who's got to bat that pitch. If a pitch is made, know that everything is legal that's happened up to that pitch. Everybody stays where they are, and you find out John was the last, somebody got to get it. He's the last legal batter, and the person out the bat is the one after the guy out there. That's all you got to know. That's the way to keep it simple.
Yeah, here's the reality. Let's say Paul was supposed to be so you're at the bottom. Let's say you're at the bottom of the 6th inning, right, in a game, or bottom of the 7th inning, and Paul's supposed to be the leadoff hitter. The offensive coach knows that and says, you know what, I'm going to take a risk. And they're down like 3 runs or whatever. I'm going to take a risk, and I'm going to put the top of my order up there and see if I can get this to fly, right? Top of the order gets a hit. Next pitch goes to the number 2 batter, and at that particular point, the other coach tries to appeal it. You got nothing, right? Now Bill was the proper batter. He got a hit first pitch. Bob continues the bat. I've never seen an offensive coach use this as a strategy, by the way. But you never know. I've seen crazier things, right? I think we talked about this one a little bit, if I'm not mistaken. The batter becomes a runner, is entitled to first base without liability to put out. When the batter is touched by a pitch, it is not, hold on a second, that the batter is not attempting to hit unless the ball is in the strike zone. I think we went through that ad nauseum earlier, so you guys all understand that. They don't try to get out of the way. What are you going to call? If it's outside of the strike zone, you're going to call a ball, dead ball, ball. Batter becomes a runner, is entitled to first base without liability of putting out when the catcher interferes with the batter. Okay. Now let's go into this a little bit more detail. Okay. Catcher's interference is when the catcher interferes, or any fielder interferes. Although I don't see how a fielder is going to interfere with the batter, but either way. The batter then, there's no interference if the batter reaches first base and all other runners advance at least 1 base. This is what we talked about, the late dead ball. Catcher goes out to reach for the pitch. Batter hits the mitt of the catcher, hits the ball in play. All runners end up going, batter runner gets the first, all the runners move up 1 base. At the time you say that's catcher's interference, but you wait till it's finished. Once it's finished, you don't even have to say anything at that particular time. Now, if all runners don't move up 1 base and the batter runner or the batter runner does not get to first base, you're going to wait till the finish, then you're going to call time, that's catcher's interference, and then you're going to award the bases appropriately. Any runners not attempting to steal are not forced to advance and remain at the base occupied at the time of the interference, right? So in that particular case, let's say you've got the, and once again we talked about the manager's option. I'm trying to think if I can come up with a situation. Catcher's interference. You've got one out, bottom of the 6th inning, tie score. Okay, runner at third. Batter hits, catcher interference, goes to the pitcher. I'm trying to think of, maybe it's not a good example of that.
Well, you're on the right track. So,
I'm on the right track, but I'm thinking a little bit differently here.
Runner on third,
Yeah.
and 2 outs. And batter hits the ball, and he hits it safely. So
Hits it safely, and then right.
and the runner scores, but the batter runner is thrown out at second base.
There you go. That needed the extension. Now the batter runner is thrown out at second base. Okay, the manager has the option to take the run, okay, assuming the run scored before the batter was thrown out at second base, and ignore the catcher's interference.
Or even first base.
What's that?
Or even if he's thrown out at first base.
Even if he's thrown out at first base.
You can decline the
We
penalty.
can decline the penalty, count the run, and move on to winning. Yep. Okay. Questions on catcher's interference? I think I have a video on that one.
Is it called catcher's interference and it's treated like interference, or is it obstruction by the defense?
Yeah, good question. Actually, Jim and I were just talking about that, and you said the high school rules have changed that now?
For purposes of high school ball, it's now called catcher's obstruction, because obstruction is what is committed by the defense. Interference is committed by the offense. However, Little League has not changed their descriptives yet. So it may take a year or so. This just happened last year, where high school changed it.
So, yeah, it's, as we talked about,
It's confusing to people, so they're trying to get some of the confusion out of it.
it's the 2 instances where interference does not happen by the offense. One is the catcher's interference, and the other is the umpire interference. Okay. The batter becomes a runner, is entitled to first base without liability of being put out when a fair ball touches an umpire in fair territory before touching the fielder. We just talked about it. And I do have a video on this one.
Now, if you're working majors, this should never happen, because you're behind the infield. You can never commit incorrect.
Rogers takes off, and the umpire, oh my goodness gracious. And hit Tony Rendazzo. Hopefully he's okay. Boy, he's more stunned and scared, I bet, than anything. Rick Griffin of Mariners did athletic.
That's on a 90-foot driver, right? Imagine how fast that's coming out that the umpire had no chance to get out of the way.
I couldn't tell where it hit him, did you, Dave? I'm hoping it was a shoulder area. Yeah. And as he moved right into it because it was slicing. Yeah, he thought he was getting out of the way, and really he was going back into it. Take a look at this vicious line drive off the bat of Montero. Trying to get out of the way, hit him in the side. Okay. Hit him in the head. Okay. Outside of an ugly bruise, he should be all right. Saunders running on the pitch, and you can see the second baseman Johnson trying to go back, let him have play on it. So a break for the Mariners. This might have been a double play. I think it would have been looked like Johnson was going to catch it in the air. He had no reaction time. Right.
Those of you, anybody here do 50-70 games?
Yeah, there's a number of them, right?
Okay. So remember, you guys are on the infield. Whoever's the base umpire, gotta be watching out for that.
You gotta be quick, right?
I have a question.
Yes,
Pay
question.
attention.
For 50-70, do you want us inside or outside?
50-70, you want to be inside. Yeah, and actually, last year, it was the first year I think that we did 50-70, right, Larry and I?
Last year I was inside.
Excuse me?
Last year we decided on inside.
Yeah. And when I first started doing it, I'm like, it's a smaller bases. It's not the 90-foot. I'm going to start it outside. I didn't like it. And because of that, it was like maybe the first or second game, I moved inside. And the reason why I do that is because you have too many people in front of you. And it's too difficult to get a good read on what's going on, and especially on a steal, to be in the right place and be able to make the proper call. So I decided that I would move in. There's still some others that are staying out, but I think when you're in that type of situation, you want to be inside. And yeah, you have to be on your toes, and you better be ready every single second that ball is there. Don't take your eye off the ball. Always keep your eye on the ball no matter what. It's important. I think it was last year on a 90-foot base. I mean, I almost got hit. It's kind of the same thing like that. You're on the infield, and you just got to be ready to jump out of the way. Any other questions? Okay, so the batter becomes a runner when the third strike called by the umpire or swung at, either way, is not caught by the catcher, providing that first base is unoccupied or there are 2 outs and first base is occupied. Okay, so this is a drop third strike rule, and this is for majors and above. Okay, I believe minors and local rules are still...
Yes, and the Supreme.
And the Supremes, no drop third strike. And even at district level, the 9-10-year-old district tournament is the same thing, no drop third strike, but the 11-year-olds and up, the 10-11s and up are drop third strike. Okay. Your first is occupied with less than 2 outs. At the time, if the runner starts to run, what I typically do, batter's out, and then leave it at that, right? If they keep running and the runner at first runs, he gets on a pickoff somewhere, gets thrown out, he's going to be out, okay? Because as we talked a little bit earlier, is that the coaches and the players should know the rule, and if they don't, they're putting themselves in jeopardy. All right, Rule 7.00 covers the runner. 2 runners may not occupy the same base, but while the ball is live, 2 runners are touching the base. The preceding runner is entitled to the base, and the following runner is the one who would be called out. So you got 2 runners at second base. The runner at first just came in. They're both touching it. The runner came from first. That's when you're going to call out if they're touched. Okay. I do have a video on this one as well. This one's really fun, actually.
First and second with nobody out.
Wait till you see this.
Segura takes off, and he's going to be picked off. Not able to get to second base, but Segura.
I'm going to stop it for a second.
Is that wait a minute. He tags Segura.
All right, I'm going to stop for a second here. Okay. So what happened on that throw, so Segura was at second, he stole second, now he's at second base. So I don't know, was it Braun maybe who was at first? And when they tried to steal, Braun ended up going to the second base. Segura got back to the second base. They were both touching at the same time, and the shortstop touched Segura and Braun. Okay, they called Braun out. Segura was safe at that particular time, right? Then Segura retreats back to first base.
Second base, and the guy that originally had second base is going to be saved up Braun's out.
One thing we will see on this is that, I don't know if it was review at this particular time, but what you'll notice is that Segura did get tagged again when his foot was off the base and his hand was off the base. They should have been called a double play.
The Cubs had it, they should have tagged Braun, he would have been out. Segura left the bag.
It's after the first time, he goes back and touches Braun.
Check it out. Right.
Now he's off again when he gets tagged.
Now they're both out anyway right there.
He put the tag on.
Now there's no way at first to take the throw.
He should be out. Absolutely. Because he did the right thing.
Segura's got to run here. And he goes. And the throw to second.
Now he's out.
So the first time he tried to steal second, he was taken. The second time he's out.
Started at second and turned back to first.
I believe it or not, I actually saw that one live, and I'm like, what the heck is happening? I've never, you would think, okay, I'll see that in Little League. You would never think you'd see that in
More
Major
likely
League.
to see that in Little League.
Yeah. All right, each runner other than the batter may, without liability of being put out, advance one base when the batter advance without liability of putting out, forces those runners to advance. Very simple, runner at first, batter walks, he's forcing the runner at first to second base. Okay, so he also has no liability of being put out at that particular point. Each runner other than the batter may, without liability of being put out, advance one base when a fielder, after catching a fly ball, falls into a bench or into the stands. The key here, again, is that they fall into there, they're no longer on their feet. Okay. One base. Each runner, including the batter runner, may, without liability of being put out, advance 3 bases if the fielder deliberately throws their glove at and touches a fair ball. The key to this are 2 things. Three things. One, it must be deliberate. If it just falls off of their hand and touches it, that doesn't count, but it has to be deliberately thrown. Number 2, it must touch the ball, and the ball must be in fair territory. Okay? 3 bases. Okay? If the batter hits it, and he gets to the third, decides I want to try for home, gets thrown out, he's out. He's only entitled to 3 bases without liability of being put out. It's not a dead ball. It's not a delayed dead ball. It's still live at that particular time. Okay. Question?
Is that from the time of the pitch?
It's from the time of the pitch. Yep.
So how would you
Question?
How would you say that they're entitled to 3 bases while the play is live?
Say that what? I'm sorry.
Like, how would you say that they're entitled to 2 bases while the play is going on?
You wait till the play's over.
So they wouldn't know how many bases they're entitled to. That's kind of
Oh, well, you're gonna announce it. I'm sorry. At the time, you're gonna announce you're gonna say that's an interference. Is that what it's called, interference?
Well,
in this case,
it's a batted ball. It's not a thrown ball. It's a batted ball. And Tony was correct on the first time. You're going to say something that nobody's going to be listening to. It's all hell's breaking loose, right? So let the play finish, call time, and just say that's interference on the right fielder. He threw his glove and hit the batted ball. The runner gets third base. Unless he was, Tony said, unless he was thrown out at all, he had tried to advance 1 base beyond the base he was entitled to. So now he's on his own.
Okay, we talked about dead balls, and we awarded, the runners had to go back, and we awarded 1 base. Here's a time where there are dead balls, and two bases are awarded from the time of the pitch, and we talk about 2 bases from the time of the throw. I think we talked about some of these. Thrown ball into dead territory in the first play from the infielder, right? Shortstop throws it into dead ball territory, it sticks into a fence, you're going to get 2 bases from the time of the pitch. Okay? If the fielder deflects a wild pitch into dead territory, right, same type of thing, catcher goes to get it, it bounces, goes into dead ball territory, you're going to get 2 bases from the time of the pitch. Fair batted ball that is deflected into dead territory on foul ground. Okay? So think about a ball down the right field line, hits the fielder, bounds into dead ball territory, or hits in fair territory, hits something funky in the grass and shoots out into dead ball territory. That's going to be 2 bases from the time of pitch. Fair batted ball that bounces over or flies through a fence. So think of the ball, hits in fair territory, goes and bounces over the outfield fence. You got 2 bases from the time of the pitch. What do we typically call that? Ground rule double. These are the ones that are 2 base awards from the time of the throw. Any throw from throw into dead balls territory that's by a fielder, that's not the first play by an infielder. Ball goes to the shortstop, he throws to the first baseman. First baseman now throws it out of play, trying to get a runner going to third. It's 2 bases from the time of the throw. So wherever the runners are at the time of the throw. You as an umpire, it's your responsibility to pay attention to where those runners are at the time of the throw. Throw ball into dead territory about an outfielder. I think we talked about that a little bit as well earlier. Any relay throw into dead ball territory by any fielder. We did talk about that. Outfielder, shortstop trying to go to home, bounces, sticks in the fence. It's from the time of the throw. A throw ball by a fielder not preceded by a batted ball. For example, a catcher's pickoff throw or throw to prevent a steal. Questions on that one? Good. Throw ball into dead territory by any fielder if the batter, runner, and all runners have advanced 1 base each. So they've already gotten to the base. You've got shortstop, gets the ball, everybody's advanced 1 base. Now he decides to try and throw the ball to get that runner at first because maybe he overran a little bit, throws it in dead ball territory. In that particular case, you're going to get 2 bases from the time of the throw. Each runner, including the batter runner, may, without liability of being put out, advance 1 base if the pitched ball to the batter goes into the stand or a bench. That was another one we talked about earlier. All right, now we're going to get into obstruction. This is, as we talked about, obstruction is on the defense. We'll talk a little bit about this, and there's a couple of different scenarios, both in 7.06. If on the batter runner, before he reaches first base, time is called at the moment of obstruction. The batter runner is awarded first, and if they're not forced, advance or return according to the umpire's judgment, meaning all other runners. You guys all got that one? Give me an example of that, anybody? Who's got an example? How about this one? Batter runner bunts down the first base line. It goes out far enough to where the pitcher's making a play on it, but the catcher's right in the base path of the batter runner. He obstructs the batter runner. Umpire can immediately say, "Time, we've got an obstruction. Batter runner, you get first." Because the catcher's not making a play on the ball. If while play is being made on an obstructed runner, time is called at the moment of obstruction. Runner going into second base, play is being made on him. The second baseman is off the bag, no ball coming to him, or doesn't have possession of the ball. That's obstruction on the second baseman, so you call it immediately. So when there's a play being made on the runner, you call obstruction immediately. Any other obstruction, the play proceeds until the play is made on the obstructed runner or until no further action is possible. Now what you're going to do is you're going to, all runners, you're going to award them, advance them, or return it according to your judgment of where you thought they should be if no obstruction occurred. And we've got some videos on this, and this might help clarify some questions that you may have. So, but once again, as umpires, that's why we have judgment out there, right?
Well, you guys take the big bucks.
Yeah. Try to give you another one.
It's the hand that we're all dealt, and there's a shot into right center field.
This is the deep part of the deal.
Can't get there. Base hit, they got Stone Yankees.
Cut that right,
Not
yeah.
a good start. Goodbye, number one. What a play by Jay on the first pitch.
Right, so the first one was the immediate, right, obstruction and call, plays back.
And now there seems to be a problem.
You will see this.
I think
I
there is
guarantee you.
interference called on Todd Seal, the first baseman. If you do not have the ball, you can't get in the way of the runner. Lee Mazzilli argued about it immediately. Here's Bobby Valentine. Now one taking a fruitful chance, a great play by Jay Payton.
The Seal makes no round. That's the part of the instruction.
In that particular case, he didn't run into him, right? But what he did, he made him run further around so that he didn't run into him, and that's obstruction. And Jim's right. Jim's right, you'll absolutely see these at the majors and the sections.
First baseman standing on the bench. That's what you will see. Call the obstruction. Make that first baseman get off that base. Now, Todd Seal knew what he was doing to that, because if you watch it closely, he leans to the right when an outlaw comes by.
Absolutely.
Very subtle, but he does it.
When an obstruction occurs, the umpire shall call or signal obstruction. If the batter runner is obstructed before touching first base, the ball is dead and all runners shall advance without liability be put out to the bases they would have reached in the umpire's judgment. So here's the important piece of it: if there had been no obstruction. And Jim was just kind of talking about this, but we're going to go through, and I'm going to have you once again we'll raise your hand. Obstruction or no obstruction? So we'll start with obstruction first. No obstruction. Okay, we have a few of you. In this particular case, that is obstruction. Right? He does not have the ball, and he's blocking the base runner from getting there. Where should he be? He should have his foot on the front side of that base, right? Yeah, questions?
How does the obstruction call differ from like when we talked about like the first baseman like getting the throw and like moving? How does obstruction differ from like?
Yeah, so maybe we make sure I got the question correct. How does this differ from the standpoint of the first baseman trying to catch a throw that's a little wayward and they collide? Right? The way it's different is that this is an intent to try and keep the runner from having a lane to the base, right? Okay. With the other one, he's trying to make a play, which he has every right to make a play on that ball. The runner has every right to that baseline. And so in that particular case, as we talked about, you've got nothing, you've got that train wreck, then make the appropriate call once everything is done. Okay, so that's the difference. They both have they're doing the right thing, and so that's why you don't call anything more than that. What do we got here? Obstruction, right. Okay. Catcher's blocking the plate without the ball. This one here? No, it's legal. He's got the ball. He can be in front of the plate as long as he's got full control of the ball there, right? Making a play. And as Jim's noting in the PowerPoint here, he's not in the right place for that particular call. Where should he be? The other side. Other side, yeah. You want to be able to get a good view of that. So I don't know whether anybody's touching or not. Raise your hand if you think this is obstruction.
Just turn it away.
Yep.
The next slide is
See where he's at? Front of the base. Here comes the runner.
You'll see this a lot.
Did the first baseman impede the progress of the runner? Yes, he absolutely did. Because what are you taught by your coaches? Where should you run when you're rounding first base?
Corner.
Inside corner. This runner does not have the inside corner, cannot get to that. Okay. I think you guys all get obstruction, right? As a fielder, you want to make sure you've got the ball, then you can be in front of the base. If you don't have the ball, get out of the way. Any runner is out if, to avoid being tagged, the runner runs more than 3 feet from a direct line between the bases. I'd like to reword that a little bit.
If you, between second and third and first and second, there are no white lines, right? To help you with that. So the rule of thumb is a reach and a step. If the fielder makes a reach and a step, and the runner runs outside of the reach and the step, that's 3 feet for purposes of this rule. So think about a reach and a step when you want to try and make this call.
And remember, it's from where the runner is at, a straight line to that base. Right, where the runner is at. Think about when you round first, as we saw in the previous, you go out, okay? Are you out of the baseline, but when you're making that big turn like that? No, you're not out of the baseline because you just made your baseline. Your baseline now is from that point directly to second base. If, while going there, to avoid the tag, you move 3 feet left or right from there, then you're going to be called out for running out of the baseline. Okay. Any runner is out after touching first base. The runner leaves the baseline, obviously abandoning all efforts to touch the next base. Okay, so the thing that you want to make sure in your mind is that the runner is just not confused. These are, especially the 9, 10-year-olds, it's possible that they can confuse what's going on. So before you call them safe or out, okay, make sure that the runner has abandoned all efforts to get back to that base. Right? Somebody runs around, goes across the middle of the infield, steps over the third base line towards the dugout, they're now out. Okay. A runner does not have to, a runner does not slide or attempt to get around a fielder who has the ball and is waiting a tag, is going to be considered out. Right? There's no must slide rule. The fielder must have the ball in their possession, and the fielder must be waiting to make the tag. Okay? So what is the rule? I think we talk about it here. The runner is out. No, I went too far. So the rule on this is that what? You need to either slide or avoid contact. Attempt to avoid contact. That's kind of a key word. You guys understand that? Coach comes out to you, he didn't slide. What are you going to say? He doesn't have to. What did he do? He avoided contact. At the majors and below, not allowed to slide headfirst into a bag, so towards a bag. So if you're going to first, going to second, going to third, or going to home, you cannot slide headfirst. If you're going back to the bag, back to third, back to second, back to first, you can't go headfirst. The runner is out if they slide headfirst into a bag.
50-70 doesn't slide headfirst.
Excuse me?
50-70 slide headfirst?
50-70 can slide headfirst. Majors and below cannot. This one's a weird one, quite frankly, when you're an umpire, because you're not expecting, you're just expecting, I'm watching to see if he's safe or out. And you're not really thinking, did they slide head first? It's one of those where, boy, that looked weird. When it looked weird, then you think about in your mind, what just happened? Oh, he slid head first? I gotta call him out for that. Okay. Runner is out when running more than 3 feet away from his or, we talked about that, right? The running out of the baseline. Let me read this again here. Runners more than 3 feet from his or her baseline to avoid being tagged unless such action is to avoid interference with the fielder trying to get the batted ball. So I add a little more of that. So now, let's say you've got the same type of situation you're running that we saw there. He's running from first to the runner's going from first to second, batted ball to the second baseman. All right. Of course, the runner can't run into the second baseman. So what they do, they run more than 3 feet behind that second baseman to get over to the second. That's not going to be interference in that particular regard, right? You're running out of the baseline either because you're trying to avoid the interference. We talked about abandoning the efforts, and then does not slide or attempt to get around the field. So they just kind of reiterated it. Any runner is out when the runner intentionally interferes with a thrown ball or hinders a fielder attempting to make a play on a batted ball. Now the intentionally is on a thrown ball. It doesn't have to be intentional if you hinder a fielder trying to make a play on the ball. You guys understand that difference? See any shaking your head? A few of you? Okay. Runner going from first to second, ball hit to the second baseman. Second baseman's about to get the ball. Runner tries to get out of the way but runs into that second baseman. You're immediately calling interference and that runner's going to be out. That runner gets first. The exception, a batter runner cannot be tagged out after overrunning first base if said batter running returns immediately to the base. Now you're going to get this at your level probably quite a bit. He turned to the left. No such thing as turning to left or right. As long as they turn and go back to the base without making an attempt to go to the next base, then they're not going to be called out. Nothing to do with which way you turn. It has to do with you immediately coming back and you're not making an attempt to second base. Now, runner goes around, beats out the throw, the ball gets away. Runner goes past first, pulls like this, okay? Then goes back. What do you got? Say it again. He attempted to go, right? So in that particular case, it was an attempt. If he gets tagged out before he gets back, you're going to call him out. That's the attempt, right? If he starts to go, realizes I'm not going to make it, then tries to go back, that's the intent. One of the reasons why coaches teach the runners to turn to the left is so that it cannot be construed as making an attempt. Okay? Not that they have to. Runner is out if after a fair or fly ball is legally caught, the runner fails to retouch the base before that runner or the base is tagged by a fielder. So we all know that ball hit in the air. Once it's caught by the fielder, you have to go back and tag up before you can go. I think you guys all familiar with that. The base runner can legally retouch the base once a fair ball in flight is touched and advance at their own risk. It can only advance if a foul ball is caught. Because what happens if a foul ball is not caught? It's a foul ball, it's a dead ball, runners go back. Right? So example of the previous statement. Ball hit out the outfielder, it touches his glove, bounces up in the air, runner at first takes off right after he touches his glove, and then the fielder comes down and catches, runner at second makes it safely. They peel to first base, what do you got? Nothing. Right? Because it's once touching, the first time it touches that fielder, now the runner can leave the base. Okay? Second point. However, if following runner is put out on a force play, the force is removed, and the preceding runner must be tagged. Actually, this is interesting. I wonder if we're missing a slide here. 708, we might be missing a slide. But, and it was 7.
That's D. Yeah.
D.
I'll look and see.
Yeah, we might be missing something here. So when you look at it from this particular, what this is saying is that you've got you got a runner at first. Okay, ball's hit to the first baseman. Right? The runner stays at first base. The first baseman touches first base. now the batter runner is out, the runner at first does not have to go. He's no longer forced because that force was taken off once the batter runner was out. Now, let's say take the same play. We'll say the runner goes back, ball hit to the first baseman. He touches the runner first with his glove, then steps on first. What do you got?
Double play.
Anybody?
Double play.
Double play. Because the runner at first was tagged because he was forced, so he was tagged out. Then you touch first to get the batter runner out. Good answer there. Okay. Any runner is out when touched by a fair ball in fair territory before the ball is touched or passed an infielder. I think we talked about this one as well earlier. So if the runner at first, he's running, ball's hits the runner before it gets past the fielder, you're going to call him out. Batter runner is awarded first base. If there was runner at second base, he's going to be brought back. Okay. That's as long as it's in front of the fielder. Now, same type of situation. You got second baseman going to get it, and it goes through his legs, hits the runner behind him. You got a live ball. You let things continue. Okay. Any runner is out when that runner passes a preceding runner before the preceding runner is out. Batter runner hits a home run, runner at first. Batter runner is so excited he runs past the runner at first. Batter runner is now out. He's out. The other runner can continue around and score. Unless that was the third out. All right, now we get into appeals. An appeal is not interpreted as a play for the purpose of another appeal. You'll understand that in a little bit. It is not interpreted as a play for the purpose of any other rule either. Can be made only while the ball is live. The ball must be live before an appeal play can be made. Must be made before the next pitch, play, or attempted play. If you remember, when we talked about batting out of order, that's an appeal. So as long as it was before the next pitch, play, or attempted play, that's why we were able to enforce it. Can be made by tagging the runner or the base. Can result in a fourth out, which can supersede a third out being made during continuous action. We will talk a little bit more about. Can be made only once on the same runner at the same base. So once a defense appeals that the runner at second missed the base, you can't appeal that same runner at that same base later. It can result in a force out. Can result in a batter runner being out before they reach first. So we talked about that earlier. Home run, right? Batter runner before they reach, they miss first. It was appealed. Batter runner is called out. His run doesn't score. If it was 2 outs in the inning, no run scored. More than one appeal can be made following a continuous play of action. As long as the ball is alive, the defense can make as many appeals as they want, as long as it's not on the same batter at the same base. Remember, the play is live, so anything that they do, if they throw the ball away, it just continues as if it was done if it was any course of action, whether they make an appeal or not. We go into a little bit more detail. This will determine whether they retain or lose their right to appeal. After plays and attempted plays made during continuous action, as we talked about, as long as the play's alive, they continue to make their appeal. Let's see, an example of that would be, and it's an assumed appeal. Fly ball to left field, runner at third leaves early, okay? Catch is made, They throw the ball in, defensive coach is saying he left early, they throw it over to third, tag third. What they're doing is they're saying we're appealing. Okay? Then the umpire makes the appropriate call. If he did leave, you're going to call him out. After the runner advances due to an overthrow on appeal attempt, defensive team retains its right to appeal. After a bluff or feint to check a runner, the defensive team still retains its right to appeal. Okay? During those particular ones you can. Now, after the defensive team balks, or in the case of the majors, the illegal pitch, appeal on there, the defensive team loses its right because now that's your attempted play. Okay, so if a balk or illegal pitch occurs, the defensive team errs on an appeal attempt. For example, throws the ball out of play. That was your attempted, so you no longer can appeal. So in that same situation, let's say the left fielder throws it to the third baseman. Third baseman muffs it and it goes out of play before he can make that appeal. Can't appeal any longer. Okay. After a pitched play or attempted play following a break in continuous action. Okay. That was the break in continuous action, right? Questions on appeals? Jim, anything else you want to add to that, you think?
No,
Okay. Any runner shall be called out in appeal when advancing to a base when the ball is in play. The runner fails to touch the base in order before said runner or missed base is tagged. Runner misses first base, goes to second base, goes on to third base. They don't have to go tag the runner. If they throw it back to first, they appeal it. First base is tagged, you can call him out at that particular time. Or you can go over and tag him and say, now you got to tell the umpire what you're doing, right? He missed the tag over, he missed the base over first, you tag him, the umpire then makes the proper appeal. Any runner shall be called out on appeal when the runner fails to touch home base and makes no attempt to return to that base and home base is tagged. Same thing as we just talked about. They miss home, go to the dugout. The defensive coach, while play is alive, says, go touch home. He missed it. Touch it. He's out. When the pitcher is in contact with the pitcher's plate in possession of the ball, the catcher is in the catcher's box ready to receive delivery of the ball. Base runners shall not leave their base until the ball has been delivered and has reached the batter. So we talked about this when the majors can leave the base. They can't until it reaches the batter. So what does that mean when it reaches the batter? Ball out here, coming towards them. When it reaches them, that's when they can leave. So it's not necessarily crossing the plate, just when it reaches that batter. So as we talk a little bit more about this, it doesn't mean that the catcher has to be in the squat position. It just means he's got to have his mask on and he's ready to receive from the pitcher. The batter's in the batter's box. All those runners have to go back. If they're not back, you're going to say, runner at first, get back, get on first base. Everybody's ready, put him back. I guess this doesn't really talk about what happens if the runner does leave early. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think it's important for you guys. If a runner does leave early, let's say the runner takes off just as the pitcher's getting ready to throw the ball or just releases the ball. What I do, there's two options. One, if you carry around a red hanky is what Little League recommends. And then what you do is you take the red hanky out and you throw it on the ground. That signals that the runner left early. What I typically do, because I don't carry that red hanky with me, is I put my hand out like this. And just hold it there until the play's over, and then I make the appropriate call. When a runner leaves early, in that particular case, if they're not put out, you put the runner back. You call time, runner left early, and you put him back on the base that they started at. And then let's see, without a slide, I'm going to see if I can explain where you would put the runner at first. Okay, let's do runner at second. He leaves early. Batter hits a single. Runner at second goes around and scores. Where are you going to put runner at second if he left early? You're going to put him back at second base. Now, let's say the same situation, runner at second, batter hits a clean double. Runner comes around and scores, but he did leave early. Where are you going to put him? third base. Yep. You're gonna put him back to where that, far back as you can put him. Since it was a double, he made it there, you're gonna push him back. I got that right, Jim? Yeah.
What if the batter is double?
What if what?
If the batter's a double, so he goes back to third.
Goes back to third. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Home run was score.
Home run, both of them score. Yes, question?
When you do bases that are loaded, runner on third leaves are numbered back to the pitcher. So the
Good
ball's
question.
8 feet in front of the plate.
Yeah. So this is the one time that I know in Little League you've got a do-over. Okay, and so the question is, you got bases loaded. Okay, runner at third, any runner, quite frankly, leaves early. Okay, number, it stays in the ball stays in the infielder, and everybody moves up one base. You're gonna call time. Runner at third left early. He goes off the field. Next batter comes up the bat. No out, no nothing.
Unless it's a bunt.
Unless it's a bunt. Yeah. Good. Yep. Unless it's a bunt.
What if they throw the kid out of the bases loaded, the kid leaves early? Throw the kid out of
Everybody goes back one base then. Bases loaded.
And none of them are pushed by the batter runner.
Correct. None of them are pushed by the batter runner. In that case, you move them back.
So the batter bats again?
In the scenario where you've got the replay, so to speak,
Bases loaded, the balls
hit to the
somebody left
infield.
early.
Somebody left early.
You said that the third guy on third goes in the
He's
dugout?
taken off. He's in the dugout. Runner at first stays at first. The batter runner stays at first. Runner at first moves to second, second to third. And then the next batter bats.
Run doesn't count.
Run does not count. No outs made.
No outs, no run, and that's the score.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the only situation that I know in any baseball where we've got essentially a do-over, so to speak. Okay. Let's move on then. Let's go into the pitchers. And I know we talked quite a bit on balks earlier, so we might be able to skip over a number of different things. But there's really, and we talked about two different legal pitching deliveries. One is the windup. The windup is where you're completely in front of the plate facing the batter. Both feet have to be within the confines of the plate, okay, and touching the plate. 1 foot has to be within the confines of the plate, touching the plate. Okay. The set position is when you're standing facing sideways, and your pivot foot, your push-off foot, must be touching the plate, now fully within the confines of the plate. Okay, pitcher's plate, that is. With the windup, the pitcher must make sure that its pivot foot stays on the ground, okay, and he can step back one, and then also forward. Okay. The key, especially later on in the season where you get that big hole in the front of the mound, even though you say you're supposed to not pick up that pivot foot, they may have to pick up their pivot foot to put it into that big hole, right? So you're not going to call anybody on that. So 1 step back, 1 step forward. Before assuming the set position, the pitcher may elect to make any natural preliminary motion such as that known as the stretch. So as we all know, like this, right, that would be the stretch. So anything that they do. But if the pitcher elects that that pitcher shall come to a set position before delivering the ball to the batter. Okay. For majors and below, note that the pitcher does not have to come to a complete stop. It's majors and below. So even if they're in the set position, if they go like this and throw, majors and below, that's fine. As we talked about, when you get into the 50-70, they do have to stop. At any time during the pitcher's preliminary movements, and until the natural pitching motion commits that pitcher to the pitch, that pitcher may throw to any base providing that the pitcher step directly to that base. We talked about that a little bit earlier, right? You're towards second base, as long as there's a player there, or you're making a play on a player, that's legal. And the key is they must step before the throw. Okay? If I'm a lefty and I'm on the pitcher's plates, okay, and I go like this, really quick, over to the first, and then step. So if it's just like this and then step, that's block, right? You gotta step and then throw. Now we're going to look at a little bit as far as where the feet need to be. So if you take a look at the top part, these are all legal positions for the feet. Now notice on the top two, that's in the stretch position, completely within the confines of the pitcher's plate. Next one down on the left, same thing, on the pitcher's plate. On the right, okay, it's going to be a right-hander. That's probably a left-hander, I take that back. He's got his pivot foot on the plate, so he's good there. And then the other two pivot foots on that. Okay. Now you get to the legal positions. Top left, completely off the base or the plate, right? So that one's no good. To the right, doesn't have his stretch position, so he doesn't have his pivot foot completely over the plate. That one's no good. Middle left, same thing, right? Not completely within the confines of the plate there. And then I'm trying to look at that top one, this one here, Jimmy. This one, this middle one right there.
That's assuming that the home plate is in the one on the right?
Yeah, middle right. He's not on the plate. That's what it is. It's really close, but he's actually not touching the plate. There's like just a little hair in between there. He's not touching the plate. That question.
Is the lower left one, if you're is he on the edge of the plate of the lower left?
He's not, he's just off of it.
Okay.
Right? So that foot's got to be completely inside that plate. Right? You're typically not going to see too many of these, right? Especially at their level. The thing that you're going to want to watch for at their level is that they're not starting this much in front of the pitcher's plate in the stretch. Or when they go to make their pivot, they step way out, or they're that much in front of the pitcher's plate. And that's where your face-off is going to help. They're going to get a better view of it than the plate umpire is. I think we went through these pretty much in nauseam, what an illegal pitch or a balk is, when there are runners on base at the majors and below. Remember, it's only an illegal pitch, and at the intermediate and above would be a balk. If runners are on base. Makes any motion who fails to pitch, fakes to first base, who fails to throw, this is a block, or the illegal pitch. Throws to an unoccupied base, or fakes to throw to an unoccupied base. Except, as we said, runner at first, he takes off for second, you can throw to directly to second in that environment because you're going to make a play. We talked about the quick pitch, right? And as an umpire, that's where you've got to control that and not allow it to happen. If the pitcher's trying to delay the game in any way, not getting up and pitching, taking too long in between, you can tell them to speed it up. If they don't, you can call them a legal pitch, which is a ball. Fails a step toward or forward toward a base before throwing. We'll talk about that in just a second. I don't think I've ever seen this where a pitcher tries to pitch without facing the batter. But that would be an illegal pitch as well. If he tries to pitch when the catcher's not in the catcher's box, okay, as an umpire, you get out of the way as quick as you can. You call that an illegal pitch. He's not touching the plate, as we talked about, and without having the ball stands on or astride the pitcher's plate. Here's an interesting thing I just read in one of the umpire forums that I'm on. Defensive coach calls timeout. There's a runner, let's say, at first base, and he calls time. He goes and they give the ball to the first baseman. First baseman brings it over, and then the pitcher, he's not on the plate or anything, and the pitcher's going, and they're waiting. The runner comes off first base. They tag him. They think they got this out. The reality is the umpire never put the ball back into play because they called time. why didn't the umpire call time? Pitcher never got onto the pitcher's plate to make or to allow the umpire to call play. Now, what would happen if the pitcher did get on there, and then the umpire said play, and then they tagged him out? Umpire didn't see that the pitcher didn't have the ball, he thought he had it, puts in play, what would be the call there? Be a balk, right? Or in the majors, an illegal pitch. Any questions? Talked about this as well earlier, if they accidentally or intentionally drop the ball while they're on the plate. And then we talked about there's no balk call in the majors or below. We're going to call the illegal pitch. And in the particular case of a balk and the illegal pitch, if the play continues, as we talked about, and if all the batter runner and all runners advance at least one base, you're going to ignore that illegal pitch, okay, or the balk associated with it. A little different than high school for the balk in that regard. Any questions? All right. Guess what, guys?